Hagmann. Together we are the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. I want to thank all the new listeners for joining us. Thank you so much for being part of our radio ministry. Let me just start the television. There we go. All right. We're all set. For some reason, I guess I just didn't press the right buttons that time. As you know, I'm not a button man. Whoa, let's see. How do we do this? There we go.
All right. Sorry, folks.
Yeah, a little echoing in the back. All right, now we're together. Folks, I just want to thank everyone for checking in. Thank you for joining us live on our YouTube channel, but thank you as well for checking in with us via our website. Sending emails. We get emails. We begin to receive them long before the program starts. And thanks for the new listeners. Global Star Radio Network, thank you for broadcasting us. And so it's what a pleasure to be a part of that family. Now, tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we have got a tremendous guest for the first 2 hours tonight, and how this all came about. And you know what? I think. Do you know about Common Core? Are we okay? Are we having a problem here?
I'm not seeing the broadcast come up. It says we're good.
Yeah, it says we're good.
Scroll up a little bit.
Yeah, we're streaming, so we should be okay. All right. So, pardon our little technical stuff here. We have to do this anyway. Last week or the week before, I was talking with Greg Jackson. He's the author of 40 Things to Teach Your Children Before You Die. And we were talking about the Kim Davis situation, talking about all kinds of social issues. And he said, well, you know about Common Core. And I said, I sure do know about Common Core. And he said, well, have you been to Ray Moore's website? And I said, no, I haven't. He said, check out ExodusMandate.org. But he said also check out escapingcommoncore.com. And if you really want to get knowledgeable about Common Core, get the DVD. Get the DVD of Common Core. Okay, Escaping Common Core. Get that DVD. I thought to myself, I'm not sure there's much more I could learn about Common Core. And if you've never heard of Common Core, what Common Core is, it'll be explained to you very well by retired Lieutenant Colonel E. Ray Moore here this evening, who's our guest, but and also the founder and head of EscapingCommonCore.com and ExodusMandate.org. But I ordered the DVD. In fact, I ordered 10 copies, and I watched the DVD. And it's about an hour. It's about an hour long. It's in 2 parts. And everything I thought I knew about Common Core, I realized I don't know. I didn't know anything about Common Core, and I thought I consider myself to be pretty well informed about the battles being waged by the communists and the Fabian socialists against our nation from within. I thought I knew pretty much all there was to know about it, but I missed something huge, so big, in fact, it's considered by some to be the capstone of the socialist communist agenda for the United States. Even more insidiously, it involves the most precious among us, our children. And of course, I'm referring to the lie behind and built within Common Core, the Common Core State Standards Initiative, most often referred to as simply Common Core. Now, I caution everyone who thinks they know about Common Core. If you think you know about Common Core, I want you to reconsider. And for those who never heard of Common Core, stay tuned. For anyone with children in the government school system, please pay attention. For anyone without any children in the government school system thinking this has nothing to do with you, think again, because this will impact you and is impacting you as well. But I suspect that most people who are aware of Common Core believe it to be just an ill-conceived idea, where 2 + 2 doesn't necessarily equal 4. It might equal whatever it might, you might think it might equal. Well, that's part of the agenda. It's an agenda without absolutes. That's just part of it. And it's a more visible aspect of it. But see, the real danger exists in the destructive Trojan horse that carries a deadly payload, in my view. It's a program that has subtly but effectively weaponized the educational process, where children are being used as the unwitting soldiers to implement a socialist, humanist worldview. A quote from Joseph Stalin: "Education is a weapon, whose effect depends on who holds it in his hands and at who it is aimed. A quote from Nikita Khrushchev. Remember Nikita Khrushchev? The shoe pounder. Comrades, we must abolish the cult of the individual decisively, once and for all. And this is being accomplished through the lie that is Common Core. And one more quote from Karl Marx: the education of all children from the moment that they can get along without a mother's call or care shall be in the state institutions at state expense. Chilling. But that's what Common Core is all about. Here to explain much more about Common Core and to give you the insight. And folks, this is valuable. Please spread the word about this. Even if you have no children in the school system, please listen. Please listen carefully. Please get involved. I'm horrified that I have not been more involved. I'm horrified. I'm horrified at the people behind this agenda, this initiative, and I'm horrified that they're using our children as foot soldiers to advance a communist worldview. I'm horrified that they're using our children as weapons against the family and against our faith. Folks, this is so important. Tonight is so important. Please. It's the best money you ever spent to buy a DVD. Escaping Common Core. I mean, this is a keeper. Well, keep it, watch it, and give it to your family. Take it down to your school board. Take it down to your teachers. They'll watch it. And let me tell you something. You will not look at school, public school, the school system, the same again. Joe, welcome to the program. And I just want to say that we have a great guest, and it's
fantastic guest,
the man behind this movie, this DVD. And again, Escaping Common Core, folks. If you're watching live,
EscapingCommonCore.com. Right. If you want to grab the video, EscapingCommonCore.com.
You got to get the video, man. I'm telling you. And you know what? I am not afraid to say you got to buy the video because it's eye-opening.
Yes, it is. Mr. Moore, thank you so much for coming on the show tonight. I'm really looking forward to it.
Thank you for having me.
No, the audience is looking forward to it. This is a topic, a hot button issue, if you will. People are very upset and emotional about this and have been asking for answers. So I hope we can really dig through some information and give people what they're looking for. Folks, if you have any questions, email us at studio@hagmannandhagmann.com. Questions for Mr. Moore regarding Common Core.
That's right. We want to thank Greg Jackson for recommending this to us and recommending the subject and Mr. Moore to us. So God bless you, Mr. Moore. Thanks for coming on with us. And let's hit the ground running, my friend. Tell the audience a little bit about yourself and about what we're going to talk about tonight.
Okay, well, I so am grateful to be here, and I'm grateful again for Greg Jackson. He's been a long-time friend and really one of the rising stars in our movement. And I'm a 72-year-old granddad. I started the Frontline Ministries Exodus Mandate Ministry about 20 years ago, and we've been slogging away and laboring for that long a length of time. But it's really been in the last decade that we started to get some traction on this issue because so many Christian families were still supporting the government school system. We say there's a lot of Christians and conservatives are addicted to state education, and we've been trying to show them that that's not biblical, and that the scriptures do teach that how we educate our children according to biblical commands is part of our walk as faithful Christians, part of our walk of faith and obedience to Christ. And now it's become really apparent to most everybody that the public schools are in terrible shape, doing a lot of harm. They've been liberal really for years, but now they're pushing homosexuality onto the children, and Common Core is, of course, part of that. So it's been we're in a crisis point. And we saw as the presidential campaign unfolded, we could see that for the first time in our lifetime, K-12, public education, Common Core, homeschooling, all these things together were going to become a national issue in a presidential campaign, that we'd be seeing a debate on some of these issues. Normally, K-12 education doesn't make it to the presidential campaign level. It's usually foreign policy, defense, economics, taxes, but now they're really talking about this. It came up in the last debate. And so about 8 months ago, I realized this was going to happen, and I saw a chance to create a movie that would accentuate the problem and give the Christian response to Common Core. We were getting millions and millions of dollars of free publicity with the discussion in the media, so we tried to come in with this movie, EscapingCommonCore.com. Actually, the title of the movie is Escaping Common Core, Setting Our Children Free. But the webpage where they can go and see a really good trailer and also order the movie, or they can order single copies or bulk copies at discount, is EscapingCommonCore.com. And I think if your audience will go to that website, they'll get real curious and want to order the movie and distribute it to their family, in their churches, and particularly to their pastor and other Christian leaders.
We need to do that.
I've been in the ministry about 40 years, and I'm a retired Army chaplain in the rank of lieutenant colonel. So I've served as a congregational pastor, an Army chaplain, or as a director of a evangelical Christian ministry, which is what Exodus Mandate is. My wife and I also were pioneer homeschoolers starting in the 70s. May have been among the, less than 100 dozen families in the nation in the modern era, and we started homeschooling. Our children now are 44, 39, 36, and 33, and they were all homeschooled through middle school years, and then we tended to put them in a private or Christian school at high school level. And now our grandchildren, the ones that are old enough, were homeschooled, and now they're enrolled in a private evangelical Christian school. So that's just a little bit of background, and we thank you for doing this, and we'll get into some details about the problem and the issues as we go along.
Mr. Moore, I began watching that video, or the DVD. And again, I thought I knew really what Common Core was all about, but I had no idea the depth, the depravity of the agenda, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. I mean, you really laid this all out. And if you don't mind, take us through a little bit of the history behind this. It goes back into, it predates, really, Dewey. But just go ahead and if you don't mind,
well,
lay it all
the
out.
term Common Core is a recent origin, maybe since 2009, 2010. And the way it's presented, it seems a little benign or harmless. It's basically the state and the federal government are creating standards for language arts and mathematics. That was the initial offering, and they're planning to get into social studies, history, and the sciences, and I think that's being developed even as we speak. And so on the surface, it seems a little benign. And in some ways, the standards, people need to be able to read and write, and they need to be able to do a basic computation. But it's really more insidious and dangerous because it sort of changes the historic way we've done education. It was begun, the groups that sort of developed it initially were the National Governors Association, the Council for Chief State School Officers, and Achieve Incorporated. And initially it was funded by large grants from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Of course, now the Department of Education is putting millions of dollars into it. The states signed on initially, I think 46 states signed on to it and offered to participate in it. And it was basically it was a federal government program pushing all 46 states, where the governors signed on. Most of them did in 2010. And it was first promoted as a wonderful form of commonality, so all the states could share the same set of common standards and curriculum and assessments. And the argument that is used is if you go from state to state, you should have some common learning standards so that we don't have wide divergence between the states and what people are learning. And this was supposed to make education better, more rigorous, and the students would be better scholars and better prepared for college and career. That was sort of the argument that was used. And it sounds on the surface benign, but we believe it's as much an agenda as or standards, and there's a curriculum that follows on behind these standards. And Common Core is really only the latest term for a long train of abuse and education malpractice. We arguments in the methodology of Common Core back to the Dewey era, the progressive education era, and that was when really education began to shift away from what we call traditional learning. Of course, Dewey was a socialist, and he believed in world governance, and so it goes really back to that, even though the term Common Core is of recent origin. We've seen that both major political parties have been joined at the hip on this. President Bush 1 had a program called America 2000. Then it was followed on by President Clinton, a Democrat. His was called Goals 2000. And it was about that era when President Clinton was in that a lot of the conservatives really began to attack and expose and fight against the federal education model called Goals 2000. Terms like outcome-based education, mastery learning, school to work, all these were terms that existed at that time. And of course, Common Core is just more of the same. It's not new conceptually. It may be a new term. Then President Bush had No Child Left Behind, and then President Obama has had Race to the Top. So the programs, the names of the terms change, but it really is the same program. Because it's a great era that we feel exists with this is state standards. The very idea of the state or government setting standards in the education arena is the great era. And we believe that we should move to abolish that system entirely, and that churches and families and private associations should be the ones offering K-12 education, not government. I think that's a sort of a brief summary of it.
Fantastic. Absolutely. You know, when I was watching the DVD, what really struck me as insidious about this whole plan, people equate Common Core, or seem to look at the Common Core as being, I guess, just of the United States. But this is a global initiative, isn't it?
Well, yes, it's a global agenda to try to, indoctrinate and brainwash and bring all the children, in the world under government indoctrination and government control. And that's what's the era of it. But, of course, I think Common Core, in terms of that term, is strictly a USA term.
Right. And one of the things, too, as an investigator, one thing we've always done, when there's in a case of a criminal situation, the one saying that we have is follow the money, because usually at the end of a crime, criminal activity, or some sort of agenda, nefarious agenda, is money. And the very well laid out in the DVD is where this money is coming from. Again, I'm looking at this and looking at how this government plan of indoctrination is actually rewarding the states through funds. There's like an incestuous relationship between the states and so-called non-governmental organizations like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation you referenced earlier. But there's a reward for states adopting the Common Core, and there's a punishment for those that are not.
Exactly, positive and negative reinforcement.
Yeah.
The government's been using this, especially. I've seen it, hyperdrive in the Obama administration. We've seen it with the government shutdown. Most recent example, a school refused to put in a transgendered bathroom in the Obama administration and threatened to cut off the federal funding for the school due to the lack of cooperation with their agenda.
There was no federal Department of Education until President Carter put that in, I think, 1976 to 78.
79.
Awarded to the teachers' unions for supporting him in his presidency. And, of course, the Constitution, doesn't mention education. We believe in enumerated power, so there's no provision for a federal Department of Education or a federal policy of education. It was generally left to the states and private individuals. And if you look at early American history from, say, the Pilgrims up to right before the Civil War, there was sponsored education at all throughout the whole United States. All the education services were offered by churches, private academies, private associations, and families. And by that I mean the local states were not involved. Now, in New England, they did have sort of a hybrid model, community schools, which were really our church schools today. But in the South, there was even a total separation from any form of government and education, and all the education was done by private academies and private groups and churches. And that changed around 1840 is the date that we give it, when Horace Mann, who was a virulent anti-Christian, Unitarian, and a socialist, helped set up the first state-sponsored government schools in Boston and Massachusetts, and then it spread throughout New England in the next 20 years. So by 1860, it was really the dominant educational model in New England. And the way they did it was the USA had no Catholics, say, prior to the Irish potato famine in the 1830s, and hundreds of thousands of Irish started flocking into Boston and New York and Philadelphia because of the potato famine, and it really spooked the Protestant clergy. We were almost entirely a Protestant nation at that time, and so Horace Mann used a trick play to persuade the Protestant clergy to pool the resources and give up their private Christian schools and academies and use a tax subsidy. They were going to tax the people to pay for state-sponsored education, and they would be quasi-religious. They certainly were more religious then than they are today, and they would use government schools to coerce Catholic children into Protestantism. It's kind of an embarrassing chapter of Protestant history in America, and a lot of them went for it. And so that's how we got state education in the beginning.
Yeah, I have a document here, and I can't speak to its authenticity, but it does speak about this agenda from 67 and 1985, and it talks about developing a educational system that replaces the parental authority, breaking the family, doing this, wiping out any parental authority and turning that over to the state, transferring all parental responsibilities to the state, and using the educational system to do this, and while doing so, rid any abuse against the child of religious indoctrination and traditional Judeo-Christian origin. This is in their words, apparently a globalist publication, but they're saying that need to make the state the new parent of the children and the education system its new teacher, and they need to remove the they call it a abuse to teach a Judeo-Christian religion to a child. So they're saying that they need to remove this responsibility from the parents and give a parental authority role to the government and specifically the educational system. Does that sound about what they're doing?
Well, I know that's going on. I can't speak to the particular document you have because I don't have it in front of me. But yes, that is an agenda of the left, and we've got other sources. We see that it pops up. Yes, that is what they're trying to do. They're trying to break the child-parent bond. It used to be in the old days, say our great-great-grandparents, the kids didn't even go to school till they were 8 or 9 years old. And they want to get the child away from the parent as early as they can to break the child-parent bond so that they become wards of the state and not the family. They want to break the power of the church and the family over the child. So yes, that is indeed happening, going on. It is part of their plan.
And how much of their plan not only is to remove, the authority away from the parents, but to pervert the child's mind to actually indoctrinate or brainwash that child?
Well, I think it's intentional. I don't believe every teacher is consciously part of it. There are a lot of decent, honorable public school teachers, and a lot of Christians still teach in that system, but they are sort of suppressed. They can't aggressively promote their faith. Sometimes all they can manage to do is block the door, so to speak, and keep some of the more egregious elements from coming in, but they are not able to propagate the gospel and teach Christianity openly in the schools, or they'll lose their jobs. But the other side has free reign. And more and more we're seeing Christian teachers being driven out, if they don't go along with the system totally. My wife's best girlfriend years ago was teaching in a school system here in South Carolina, and she was actually one year was Teacher of the Year in her district, and was really taught honors classes. She was sort of an upper-level teacher teaching some of the bright kids. And when they came in with the outcome-based education goals 2000 agenda, she sort of refused to teach it. She just sort of ignored it and went on using traditional, educational methodology. And they let her cut her loose. They didn't fire her, but they took her classes away from her and put her in teaching 12th grade remedial reading for children who had never learned to read and made it to the 12th grade. And it really broke her heart. And then after a while, they took her out of that and put her in the library as an assistant librarian. So after a few years, she just quit. Mm-hmm. And they just drove her out by abusing her. And she was a real strong, born-again Christian. We see this all over the country. Many, many Christian teachers are being abused. I don't mean physically, but driven out and being forced into compromising positions. I was recently at a conference. I don't want to get too specific, but I talked to a strong Christian lady who was assistant superintendent of a school district in Texas, and it has a lot of Christians in that district, and I think she said even a lot of the teachers are Christians. And she had a directive recently, probably in the last several months or even weeks, where she was being ordered to implement a transgender educational program throughout the entire school system. And this woman was in real consternation of soul and mind. And what is she going to do? I mean, it would just be totally harmful to the children, but, she probably will lose her job if she doesn't follow the instructions. So this is going on all over the country in probably thousands of cases, certainly hundreds of cases, if not thousands like that. And it's a real jungle in these public schools, and we're saying it's time for responsible parents to get their children out of these schools into the safe sanctuary of Christian schools or homeschooling. It's time for the pastors to stand up and be the men of God and the shepherds of the flock that God has called them to be. If I had any group that I am most disappointed in, I am most disappointed in the conservative and evangelical pastors. They will not engage on this, and many of them know it's a problem, but they're afraid to deal with it. And so I think a lot of these ministers are going to suffer loss of reward on Judgment Day because they didn't prepare and take care of their flocks. God has called a pastor to watch over the flock and to protect the sheep. And in many cases, they're not doing it at all. And I'm not talking about the liberal pastors. I'm talking about the conservative ones. So if you want to do some real good, and there are a number of them who are not informed. They don't know what's going on, and they're a little hesitating to get involved in something like this until they're informed. But if your listeners want to do some good for the church and for the community, order our movie at escapingcommoncore.com and ask your pastor to look at it. Don't give it to him. Lend it to him. I've been in the ministry 40 years, and everybody's given their pastor a book to read or a tape to look at, and they are swamped. And none of them are going to say no, but they're not going to get around to it in many cases. So you lend it to him, give him a week, and then ask him if he's looked at it, and he'll say no, he hadn't had time, and you say, well, Pastor, I'll give you another week. Then he'll say no, he didn't have time. You say, well, Pastor, I insist that you look at it. It's important to me that you get informed, and I'll give you another week. And you just stay after him, and finally he'll relent.
Or sit down with him and watch it, make him watch
it. That's right.
Yeah. I'm telling you, man. Folks. By the way, for those joining us late, our guest is retired Lieutenant Colonel E. Ray Moore. That's Moore. He had something up called escapingcommoncore.com. That's his website, escapingcommoncore.com. That's where you can order the DVD from, and also exodusmandate.org.
That's the site you go to if you want information, literature, if you want to volunteer, if you want to support the ministry, get more information. Again, that's exodusmandate.com.
Please go to the escapingcommoncore.com if you want the movie.
Right.
And you can order discounted bulk copies there for friends, and then if you like it, you can resell them and get your investment back. But if you're interested in volunteering and want to work with our ministry, go to exodusmandate.org.
Yeah,
we have literature and books and things that we can send.
Again, I thought I knew about Common Core. I thought I knew about the really the nature behind it, but I didn't. And the more I looked into this with the DVD,
the DVD has so much information behind the scenes, things that happened from presidents like you mentioned, George Bush Jr. Actions he took while he was serving as president that affected this program from coming to fruition. So many of the professed conservatives. We see Jeb Bush, a main presidential contender, because the media props him up to be one. He fully embraces and supports this Common Core.
Right, he does. And of course, we say as far as at the national level, there's no difference between Bush and Clinton and Bush and Obama when it comes to national education. They're all in favor of nationalized education and controlling the children through government schools. So we think that's just a totally false model, and we think Christians should pull out of these schools and go into private Christian education and homeschooling.
Exactly.
About homeschooling, Mr. Moore, can you speak, and I'm sure you deal and hear a lot of the stories, how much of an uptick has there been on attacking parents that homeschool their children? Has it increased over the last year, 2 years, 5 years?
There's efforts to try to suppress it. I'm afraid the left made a terrible mistake. They let the genie out of the bottle. You can't put it back. And there are upwards 2 million to 2.5 million children being homeschooled now, and probably 70% of them are evangelical Christians. Most of the rest are conservative Catholics, and maybe Mormons and conservative Jews and those who have kind of a traditional morality, and I think many wouldn't give it up under threat of jail. It's such a wonderful discovery. We homeschooled all four of our children starting in the 70s, and we didn't even know another family homeschooling for about 4 or 5 years. And the people thought we had flipped out doing it, and we weren't quite sure ourselves that we hadn't. It's pretty exciting to be on the front end of something so wonderful as this. And we didn't start homeschooling, but we were early pioneers and early leaders. And our children have all excelled, have done extremely well. They're faithful Christians. The ones that are married are good parents, raising their kids in the faith and the church. My oldest son finished the Citadel, the Military College of South Carolina, in 1993, and he was probably one of the early ones that actually went through college that had been homeschooled. And he finished valedictorian in his class, and he was a cadet colonel and regimental commander of his class. And only 4 times in the history of the 200-year history of the Citadel has one student gotten both of those awards in the same year. And he's a very outstanding young attorney here in my city. Very respected in his peer group, and our kids have done very well. And we gave them a Christian education at home up through middle school or to middle school, and then they were in a private Christian school or private school.
Yeah, I see a lot of issues with people today. You have a husband and wife, and the way the economy is, people have to work 2 jobs, and they're finding it hard to find the time to homeschool their children. And we have to.
That's by design, isn't it?
Absolutely. One of the things the churches have been lacking in, and we need to pray that the churches step up and take more of a community-minded effort, is because we see, homeschoolers, the government has created this militarized police state. We know that, it's no secret. But now they're using it on things like lemonade stands set up by children. They're using it on things like truancy. If a kid misses school or is late to school a few times, they're putting parents in jail. And they're looking into people who have homeschooling children. They're actually saying that is a reasonable cause of suspicion for bringing in child services and taking other actions against the parents, bringing the whole force and might of the federal government against a family, trying to break that bonding, that family love and keeping their children away from the indoctrination. They're actually using the force arm of the police state to make these people submit to their will. It is truly scary today. People are asking questions. Should we even homeschool? I'm afraid, of the people. I don't want to vaccinate my children. I want to keep them homeschooled. But, the county or the government we live in is saying that I can't. I have to pay this. I have to do that, or I'll, go to jail. If people turn to your organization for information, is this somewhere, an area you can help them in on how to?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
We have a exodusmandate.org if they want information on these kinds of things. We can send them literature information. We're helping several groups right now who are planning to start a private Christian school in the near future, and we've got a very thick document on that. I don't want to give that out unless somebody's dead serious about it, because it's kind of a thick handbook. But if they really form a committee and they're actually trying to start up a private Christian school, we can give some guidance on that. And, of course, we try to make this a scriptural theological argument. We're saying, I believe that the Bible teaches that how you educate your children is part of your walk of faith and obedience to Christ. So you can't be a faithful biblical Christian in this particular area of your life if you put your children in a pagan, godless, atheistic school. We have information, a lot of it provided by the Nehemiah Institute, and they're in the movie as well, that if you leave your child in a public school throughout their career, 80% of committed Christian children or children from committed Christian families are abandoning the church and the Christian faith in their early adult years, and only 20% return. So there's a holocaust going on in the evangelical churches because of public schooling. Recently heard of a case in Louisiana, and this is fairly recent, where I assume they were a Christian family. The father was a policeman. I don't know what the mother did, but they had twin boys, and they were in a public school in somewhere in Louisiana, and they were very close to their next-door neighbor, a grandmother, and the boys would come over and play at her house, and one of the boys was playing with guns and tools, like carpenter's tools, and doing things that boys do at play with toys that boys like, but the other child was dressing up like a girl and wearing high heels, and the grandmother, the next-door neighbor, was troubled by it, and she said, "Why are you doing this?" And he said, "Well, I may be a girl." And so she said, "No, son, you're a boy. You should be playing with manly toys, not not pretending to be a girl." And she said, "Why do you say you might be a girl?" And she says, "Well, my teacher at school told me that I might be a girl." And it really, shocked the woman. So I think she called the school herself and talked to the principal. And the principal said, "Yes, he might be a girl." So she reported it to the parents, who saw the same behavior, but they didn't bother to investigate. And they said, "Well, we saw he was doing this. We didn't know why." And so they took him out and started homeschooling him. I don't know how they managed to do it, but I mean, parents are just have their head in the sand. They're like ostriches. Their children are being destroyed, and these public schools, and these are Christian conservative people. It's just a shame. And see, they don't know because the pastors are not warning them, and if they don't listen to a show like yours or some of the talk shows that I'm on, they don't know it's happening, and they're just living in denial about the horrendous situation. And now with the recent same-sex marriage case, the schools, the government sees that as their policy, and the schools, we could say, are now officially in favor of same-sex marriage and homosexuality. And if you're at a school and you're teaching something contrary to that, you could have the same kind of experience that Kim Davis did. She didn't go along. And so this is what's happening, and people are just not living in reality. So they need to get our movie and demand that their pastors look at it. And if they won't fight back, they need to maybe look for another church. But it's a tragedy with the clergy, in my opinion. It's the biggest tragedy we have.
One thing that I learned when I was watching that DVD. Well, I learned many things, but one thing I learned about that is, or from that, is the so-called Christian evangelicals. I mean, they, as you point out, the biggest failure, I think, is from the Christian church. Is from the really. I mean, we have, and the Christian body itself. Mr. Moore, I'll tell you what, 15 or 20, I don't know, however long. My youngest is, how old is she? And she's 24, I think. Anyway, had I seen this, or had this been going on to this extent when she was in school, had I seen this, I would have been marching into her school. Well, actually, we did a homeschool her, so the last 6 years of her education. But having said that, before college, but I got to say, this really, watching this DVD, where we are at today on a social level with our immorality, or this lack of spirituality, this is really the capstone. Common Core is really the capstone to, or the final nail in the coffin, so to speak, to completely socializing our country, taking God out of every vestige of everything there is, and brainwashing our children to be soldiers against the family and against the family unit and against God. And for people not to understand the severity of this to me, and to or not to do anything in the face of the information that you have, the research that you conducted and put on this movie, this film, this DVD. For people not to be outraged, to me, is an outrage in itself. I don't know if I made sense, but that's a rant.
A lot of them are living intentionally in denial. And denial is a psychological defense mechanism that many people, take, exercise when the reality is so horrible that they lie to themselves or pretend it's not happening. I guess a good example would be where a woman in a church has a husband who's an alcoholic and a wife beater, and she goes to church on Sunday. She says, "Oh, Pastor, my husband is a wonderful Christian man," and she's living in denial. And a lot of the Christians are living in denial about what's happening in our culture. This Common Core is not a new thing; it's a new term. This has been going on really strongly since the turn of the 20th century with Dewey, and we could even trace it back to Horace Mann in the 1840s. But the schools had Christians and conservatives in them, and so we had sort of a level playing field until 1962 and 63 with the Supreme Court prayer and Bible reading decisions. Even though they weren't Christian, they weren't assaulting our faith and coercing our children as much then. I finished high school in 1961, and we still had chapel once a week and had prayer and Bible reading at homeroom every day. So it wasn't a Christian school, but evolution may have been taught, but they could talk about creation. You could talk about Jesus. It was a kind of a level playing field, and that has totally changed now. And they're teaching Islam in the schools, homosexuality, but no Christianity, no Jesus.
No, you're right. I mean, you can't even. I've seen stories recently where children in school have been reading their Bibles in recess or lunchtime and have been, suspended or disciplined just for reading from the Bible privately away from any classes. It is so restrictive. You would think that, this was back in the 60s with children reading communist propaganda in schools, how they attack how they attack the scriptures. But they are allowed to, promote, the lesbian, gay, transgender, the LGBT, whatever you call it, agenda and literature, the most derogatory and despicable, sexual stuff they can get into. But don't you dare bring a Bible to school. Don't you dare use Jesus' name, referring to Scripture, or you will be in trouble. And this shows absolute proof of indoctrination away from biblical principles, which is what they want the family to move away from. They want, especially the children. This is what they did in Germany with the Hitler Youth, created a generation of youth who were rebels, who were troublemakers, and this is what happened when they turned into the SS. They turned into the people who took Germany over and started the mass genocides.
Yeah, we believe, though, that we have a unique moment in time, a window where their damage and the harm and the offenses are so enormous that even people who are kind of not very bright can figure it out, and they can a lot of them are taking their children out. Common Core is driving tens of thousands of families out of the public school system. I, of course, go to homeschool conventions all the time, and we see a whole new group of people coming in to the homeschool conventions that have children and teenage children who just can't take it anymore, and they're pulling out and starting to homeschool even in upper years when typically most homeschoolers start young. So we think there's a window if we would pull together as a people and we could awaken the sleepy pastors where they would start taking care of their flocks and warning their families, we could see several million people pull out over the next several years. And it's not inconceivable that we could break their power. Everybody's complaining and whining and moaning. You can't defeat an evil power by protesting and whining. And that's what Christians do. Oh, please, Mr. Liberal, stop hurting my children. He's not going to stop. He's going to keep right on. But you can create a rival power. And if we broke out in enough numbers, we could at least have parity and protect our families and our children, protect our churches and communities. We have right now about 15% of all the children in America at the K-12 level are being schooled outside of government schools. Not all of those are Christians and conservatives, but if we could drive the numbers up to 25 to 35%, we might see the public school implode completely, or at least create parity where they would not be able to persecute us. We would have our children are more outstanding. They're not drug infested and delinquent and dumb and ignorant like a lot of the kids that come out of public schools. And they're more productive, better citizens. This is a whole different culture with Christian schools and home schools. And so we could win this battle or this culture war right here at the education level. If we keep putting these kids in these public schools, we'll lose all the other fights. We'll lose the Second Amendment fight. We'll lose the fight on abortion. We'll lose the fight on Planned Parenthood, because they're changing the culture through education. This is how the left has won the battle, the war. But if we could capture the children for Christ in Christian schools and homeschooling, and maybe lose these other fights temporarily, in the long run we would produce a new culture and a new nation. We could re-Christianize and re-evangelize this culture through Christian education.
We got just a few short minutes before our top of the hour break.
I just want to say, John, sorry to interrupt. I just want to say this. John, a quote from I learned from the film, by the way, the DVD. John D. Rockefeller. I don't want a nation of thinkers. I want a nation of workers, and that's exactly what Common Core is doing. It's creating a nation of workers, and the other part of Common Core of citizenship to become really global citizens. And man,
that's exactly it.
Why can't people understand this? And after the break, I just want to say I'm going to announce a special offer. 5 people. I've got 5 DVDs here that I'm willing to part with for nothing, free to listeners. But
Escape Common Core is the DVD, and we will do that after the break.
Yeah. Mr. Moore, who should? I'm gonna give these five copies away. Who should? Who'd be best to receive those? Somebody that's gonna.
Well, I think if there's a person that's sort of informed, and already concerned about the culture, if they're not sound asleep like a lot of Christians are, that would be a good person to get it, where they would take it and show it. We need it shown in churches, Tea Party groups, homeschool support groups, and use the movie to kind of build up our movement, where people will look at it and then go to our webpage and order. Okay. And that would be good. And then if a person had one, if they could show it, get their pastor to look at it, or elders in their church, or Christian leaders, try to awaken them. If they refuse to be awakened, now I want to say what's wrong with the pastors in the next hour.
Okay.
Say why they're doing this. But if they won't awaken, you might need to go on to somebody else. A lot of them will never awaken because they're afraid to do anything.
All right, that's correct. We're talking with retired Lieutenant Colonel Ray Moore. His website, escapingcommoncore.com. If you want the DVD, escapingcommoncore.com. If you want to volunteer, if you want literature, information, or to reach out to him, exodusmandate.org is his website. You're listening to Ray Moore on the Hagmann Hagmann Report on this Global Star Radio Network broadcast. Today is Tuesday, the 15th of September, and to Jade Helm. Ray Moore will be back with us in hour number 2. Stan Day on hour number 3. Stay with us.
And those watching on YouTube, we'll be right back. And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to this Tuesday edition of the Hagmann Hagmann Report. It is September 15th, 2015. Of course, the end of Jade Helm, or is it? I doubt it. I doubt it. Folks, I want to thank each and every one of you for listening and tuning in tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, if there's one thing I can ask, please tell a friend about this program, this episode, but this program in general, this episode specifically, Common Core. I now have something even more. After watching the DVD exposing Common Core, exposing Common Core, what am I thinking? I just really watched it, and I realized after I got done with it how much I didn't know about Common Core. And anyway, folks, I just want to mention a couple of things before we get back to our guest. You know, we talk about problems. We talked yesterday with Wayne Peterson, author, who suspects that if we have an interest rate rise tomorrow by the Fed, Thursday by the Fed, things are going to get pretty dicey. Well, you know, we are called as Christians to be proactive, are we not? I think we are. And if you want to be proactive with your own finances, if you're sick and tired of being forced in investing only in stocks, mutual funds, and just the Wall Street controlled items where the fees outperform your assets, are you? Well, if you are, step out of the matrix and into the light and control your own money. Go to survival401k.com. That's survival401k.com. Go to hagmanhagmann.com and click on the link to Survival 401k. Please do that. If you have a 401k in the system, get control of it. Invest in, their Survival 401k plans are designed from the ground up where you can invest in things like, alternative assets, precious metals at home, rental properties, rural retreats, prepper supplies, including those sold by American Survival Wholesale. What a nice segue. By the way, let me just go back to Survival 401k. Call 844-MY-GOLD and the number 2. I think I'm losing my voice.
844-MY-GOLD and the number 2.
That's
Ross Powell from Survival 401k.
Right. Yeah, 844-MY-GOLD and the number 2. Sorry about that. I guess, I don't know what's up with my froggy voice.
And if you're done with that announcement, just want to say hi to Linda W. listening in Tipperary, Ireland.
Hey, top of the morning to you.
I'm amazed.
Is that Irish or I don't
know. all the different countries that people
it's fantastic.
Reach out to us from.
Right, we've got a couple listening from Germany, couple from Australia right now, New Zealand, Israel. United Kingdom, and hello to Israel, especially to you listening right now in the banks of the
Galilee.
Thank you. My goodness.
Roy Moore, retired Lieutenant Colonel Roy Moore is our guest today. His website is, and this is for the information side, volunteering, reaching out to him, exodus.org. If you want his DVD, escapingcommoncore.com is the website. That's Escaping Common Core. I would urge people to buy the DVD, share it with your friends.
Oh, yeah.
Anybody who has children who are about to be school-age children, who have children in the school systems already, visit their sites and read the literature even if you want before you buy the DVD. Reach out and ask for more information. But
only if you're going to act on it, please. And here's what I'm going to do for the people who really will promise me, and you got to make pinky swear to me, okay? You got to promise me now. I've got 5. I'm willing to send out 5 DVDs to you free of charge of Escaping Common Core. Okay, these are DVDs I purchased personally. My wife and I did. And I will send out to 5 individuals. If you promise me that you will take these DVDs or your DVD, you'll watch it and then share it with somebody at your school board, a teacher, or, pastor, especially a pastor that's, maybe needs to be awakened. But please don't sit on it. Okay. Money's hard to come by. So we want to be good stewards. So please, send an email. Here's how I will do this. The first 5 who really promise to do this, send an email. Go to hagmanhagmann.com, click on the Contact Us form, and just put in the subject line, put Exposing Common Core DVD, Exposing Common Core DVD, and then your name, and you have to use a real name and real mailing address in order for me to send this out to you. And I'll send it out to you, no strings attached, free of charge. So the first 5 I get, we'll send it out to you tomorrow. And I promise, but you got to promise me that you're going to put it to good use, and I promise that we'll get those out tomorrow. And for the rest of you, please take this seriously. Take what Mr. Moore is saying seriously. You've got to take it seriously. I can't emphasize it. I'm just so hot on this subject. Joe, go ahead.
All right. Mr. Moore, let's. Where do you want to pick up on this side? I know you said we want to talk about the school reform, the politicians trying to reform schools.
Okay, well, we believe public education or government education is a socialistic model of education. We've got to realize that it's not a free market model. And we know that anything that works well in society generally operates on the free market and not government. Government tends to spoil and mess things up. So government education or state-sponsored education can never be fixed and reformed because it's a socialistic model. You don't hear conservatives talking about reforming Obamacare or other things. They want to repeal it. So we've got to understand that this model that we have is 160 years old, started in the 1840s, and it's a socialistic model. Now, it hasn't always been as bad as it is now, but we've really come to the conclusion of a 160-year failed experiment in education, with public education, where all the debris and garbage and trash of a 150-year failed model washing up on our shores. This is not recent. You know, a lot of people wake up, at the conclusion or the end of a problem. Common Core is the final step for the left and the world socialists to take total control of our children. And a lot of people are just waking up. But this has been going on a long time, certainly back to Dewey. And that's one thing that the movie will do, is give you the long view. So we have a big problem with some of our allies, conservatives, try to fix these schools. Well, that's insane. And they really, when they try to repair or fix public education, they're really helping the enemy. We need to realize that state education now is completely the domain of the secular left or the Marxist domain. It's enemy territory. And now it doesn't mean that everybody that works there is a bad person. Now, I mentioned earlier that there are a lot of good people that work there still, but they are suppressed, and they cannot express their worldview or their Christian faith. So it's an enemy domain, and we need to give it up and quit trying to fix it. State-sponsored public schools can't be reformed. And it's a failed system, and it needs to be abandoned entirely by conservatives and Christians. And we need to get the silly idea of fixing these schools out of our mind.
Fixing it, no way. Deconstructing it, absolutely. You got to rip it down. I mean, wow. I want to be careful.
I have a little joke I tell.
Go ahead.
It says, trying to fix public education is like trying to teach a pig how to dance. You get dirty, it doesn't work, and the pig gets mad.
I have a similar saying: you don't want to wrestle with a pig because you both get dirty and the pig likes it. But same thing. I just want to say hello to Lillian in Newfoundland. God bless you, Lillian. Thanks for listening. And also New Brunswick. God bless you for listening.
This is a world agenda, even though it's not called Common Core in Europe, I don't think, or in Canada, but it's the same system is working through the socialists worldwide. They know they're going to win if they have the children. They're just biding their time. You can whine and complain but they've got your kids. So if we're going to beat them, we've got to strip the children away, bring them home into the safe sanctuary of Christian schools and homeschooling, and rebuild our Christian civilization, rebuild our churches and families from the ground up. The government's not going to do it. They're the ones that are actually messing it up. So appealing to these same old politicians, even Republicans, they should be a little more sympathetic to us, but they're part of the problem too.
Yeah, exactly. Boy, so many questions. I'm not even sure where to start. By the way, if you're thinking Ray Morris sounds familiar, Indoctrination, the DVD and let's see here, a 300-page companion book as well. I just want to re-emphasize that.
This would be a good place to mention that, Doug.
Go ahead.
Good.
Sure.
I was part of a project about 4.5 years ago called Indoctrination, and they can find that by going to indoctrinationmovie.com. And I was executive producer and had a secondary role. We put some of the funds up and sort of helped guide the project, but it was really the genius of Colin Gunn and Joaquin Fernandez. They were the director-producers. And that movie had a tremendous impact across the country and is still being used. But it didn't have anything about Common Core because it came out before that actually became a hot political issue and entered the political lexicon. So we felt a need because of the Common Core that I went with another group and just escaping Common Core, setting our children free. But it's in the same venue and sort of a follow-up to the Indoctrination movie. Urge your people to go to indoctrinationmovie.com, and they can order that there. It's a real good trailer, so that's a very, very good movie, and we continue to actually promote that one as well.
Indeed. And if I can read something here from a document very quickly. It's only a couple of sentences here. I just want to tell, this kind of reaffirms, and Joe referenced some of this earlier. Man, the lighting is terrible here. Okay. Joe mentioned this earlier. In this document, and Joe, what is this? The Charter of the Rights of the Child.
Okay, what this was is a alleged leak.
Right.
From 1967. It was from the Toronto... they call it the Toronto Protocol leak.
Okay.
And it was also published in a few places, but this was allegedly a globalist publication that talks about carrying out the last phases for their world control domination system, political, militarily, economically, etc.
Well, what this says is very consistent with what Mr. Moore is talking about here, and what his DVD exposes. If this grabs your interest, the DVD is for you. Then the document states in part, it will be profitable later to transfer the role of the state in relation to the child to the highest international bodies, such as the United Nations. And I apologize here; the lighting's a little bit bad. Understand this well, and I quote: "Our goal is not to protect children or anyone from another, but to cause the consequent fall of nations, which are a major obstacle to the implementation of a new world order. That's why the Office of Child Protection must be invested with the absolute legal authority. They must be able, as they see fit, but always under the pretext of protecting the child, to remove them from their original home environments and place them in family backgrounds or foreign government centers that have been established for our internationalist principles and religion. Therefore, it will complete the final breaking of the hang on, I'm turning the page, of the Western Family Unit. And you know what, Mr. Moore, the Common Core, as subsidized and as paid for by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and others, I mean, ultimately they want to destroy the family unit. They want to destroy to take all of theology and all of religion out of our children's education.
Al, that's absolutely correct. I'm fairly familiar with that document, I guess, but I know the sentiments expressed or what they're really doing. And of course, to think that we can win the culture war, Christians are really stirred up now. They're getting politically active and, protesting what happened in Kentucky with the clerk there. But to think we can win the culture war when a majority of Christians and conservatives have their children being indoctrinated in the public schools doesn't pass a common sense test, much less a theology test. We have lost this culture in this country due to 6 generations of public schooling. That's the culprit, and so we've got to do something entirely different. And so we think if we can save the children, rescue the children, and get them into the safe sanctuary of Christian schooling or homeschooling, we can break their power over the culture. We've worked a lot in our ministry with the Southern Baptist Convention, and I'm sure probably you have a lot of Baptists that listen to your show. There are 18 million Southern Baptists, and most of them still have their children in the government schools. And we're saying, look, if the Southern Baptist is a conservative denomination, if they would just do the right thing with their children, they could break the power of government schools, particularly in the South and the Midwest, where they're so plentiful. But we've got to stop feeding the monster. We're feeding our children to the monster.
Yes.
And if we stop, we've got to do differently. They're not going to change by your protest. I've seen so many cases of people go meet with the principal and go to the school board and make a statement at the school board and write the principal. They just shake their heads, they just nod, and just wait for your anger and your protest to be assuaged, and then they just go right on doing what they're going to do. They're going to indoctrinate your children. They're going to turn them away from Christ and the Scriptures and damage them, and you're going to lose your children. You're going to be very unhappy when you get to be an older person because you didn't raise your children in the right way. Proverbs 22:6 is, train up your child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. I'm still, hopefully I have 10, 20 more good years of activity. I just turned 72, and I'm in very good health, and my wife is too. But as we've come kind of toward the end time of our lives, we're very happy and joyful about our children. They've turned out well. They're doing well. They're successful. And the Apostle John said in 3 John, and he was speaking of his disciples, he said, I have no greater joy than that my children walk in truth. And we have happiness at the end of our lives. We have a good friend here in town, a Baptist minister. He's about 10 years younger than we are, but he's still active. And his wife used to teach with my wife at a Christian school. And she told Gail years ago that when we were in seminary, I think it was at Southwestern Baptist Seminary down in Fort Worth, Texas, 30 years ago, we decided whatever else we did, we were going to give our children a Christian school education. And indeed they did. And they've got 2 boys now who are married and have their own children, and one of them actually teaches in a private Christian school. And they're walking with the Lord, and they're successful parents and doing well. But she told Gail that we hung out socially with 3 other seminary families. They were our age, didn't have any children yet. They were studying for the ministry. And every one of them put their kids in public schools. And all of them have 1 or 2 troubled, problem children, delinquent, drugs, different problems they've had. And she thinks it was largely because they didn't really give them a thoroughgoing Christian education. You can't make up for the damage that the public school does to your child 5 days a week by what you do in Sunday school or home. Right. We don't have family altar or devotions much anymore. I was talking to this pastor about a year ago and reminded him of what his wife had told my wife, and he said, yes, and we also had family altar every night at supper, read the Scriptures and prayed and sang a hymn with our children. And he says, I think that was one of the main reasons, as well as their Christian school education, that kept them growing in the Christian faith. And I said to him, well, you ought to be preaching that. But that's what needs to happen. And we see in faith, all all the Christian families. It used to be when our grandparents were coming along, you would rarely see a delinquent child in a Christian family. Today, it's commonplace, and this is the reason is they have put them in these pagan schools, and have turned their hearts from Christ. And in some cases, because the pastors will not teach on it, in many cases the people do not understand what's happened to them. They don't understand what's happened to the culture. And we're losing elections and losing the culture because of public education. It's at least one of the main culprits, in my opinion.
Mr. Moore, let me ask you a pointed question, okay? Because a lot of people are saying, well, I've gotten emails to this effect, and a lot of people are in the position where they've got, we'll say, 2 children, and they're married. They're young. They've got a husband and wife works. They've got to work. They got, in some cases, the husband's got 2 jobs, the wife's got 1. Sometimes it's reversed, but the time is limited. They've got 2 children within the public school system, K through 12. We'll say elementary school. If you were in that position today, let's say you were 30 years old and you were in that position today, knowing what you know right now, what would you do if you were in that position? 2 kids, a bunch of jobs, bunch of debt, trying to pay down your debt, just jobs to live, and your wife is working as well. What would you do?
That's the best question we've had tonight, and I hope I can do justice to it. First of all, they do not have to stay there. That's an important thing. Now, a lot of them feel trapped in public schools. They cannot afford what we call the expensive campus Christian school. It might be $5,000 to $8,000 a year per child, and a lot of working class people are priced out of Christian education that way. And then they don't feel competent or able, or maybe both are working, and they can't handle the individual family homeschool. There are ways first of all, we think the churches need to step up and help provide help to these kinds of families. Of course, the pastors are AWOL in probably 80% of the cases. Now, we are seeing a new trend toward pastors taking up and starting Christian schools, but you need to pressure your pastor to start a Christian school, and of course, if you both work, then that would help. You could have them in the Christian school if you could afford it. Another alternative, and we pushed this in the movie, and we're going to have a volume 2 of Escaping Common Core probably out in October. We're going to have practical stuff in volume 2, but online education is a wonderful solution, and it can be done much less expensive than campus Christian school, but you do have to pay something. And small churches could have maybe 1 teacher and 20 kids and have a online Christian basement. Looks like they have Sunday school, but you've got to get them out, whatever you do. Tell you a story. It's kind of an interesting story. I know a family where they had worked overseas for years in mission work, and they had an illness in the family and had to return. And when they came back, all the children had been homeschooled overseas. When they came back, there was 1 child still left at home being homeschooled. I think he was a 9th or 10th grader. And there was a kind of a financial emergency, and the mother had to go get a job. She had to work a full-time job to help, with the family budget, and she couldn't homeschool anymore. And there are tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of families in this type of situation. So the 10th grade boy had to go to a public school. Now, this was a very strong, committed Christian family. And so he didn't want to go. He wanted to be homeschooled, but she said, I can't do it. I've got a job I've got to take. So he went to public school for a while, and then one day, like a 10th grader, he said, Mom, I'm taking myself out. I'm not going back to the public school. And she said, son, you've got to. I can't be with you at home. I'm going to have to work. There's just no way. We're in a real bind here. He said, no, Mom, I'm taking myself out. And she said, well, aren't you being salt and light? Aren't you doing some good? He said, I am being salt and light, and I'm trying to witness. But he said, I'm being damaged. I am being harmed by the environment, what I'm learning, and these children are putting upon me sexually with bad jokes and stories, and I'm being mentally, spiritually assaulted by the pagan children around me, I'm taking myself out. And indeed he did. He stayed home by himself for 2 years and homeschooled himself. He went on to college, married a Christian girl, went to a Christian college, and he's in some kind of Christian work today. Now, that's an unusual story, but it can be done. There is a God, and we can pray and ask the Lord to help us. Nobody has to have their children trapped in these pagan, godless, atheistic schools. And when even these families who have stressful situations financially, when they get to heaven, they're going to have to give an account for their kids. And I believe there's going to be a lot of sorrowing, even though we'll all be there together when we get there, if we have let our children be harmed by these schools. We've got to get them out.
Amen. And that's very well said. You know, I struggle to I mean, where we're at today with the generation, millennials, the people just out of school, the young people just out of school, who are, I mean, you can tell, at least I think we can tell, those who have been indoctrinated by the public school system, the values that they have.
And it gets worse the higher education you go.
Yeah.
I have a listener question here, Mr. Moore. This is from the UK. This person's from the UK. They would like to know if there's any connection between Common Core in the US and Common Purpose in the UK.
I really can't answer if Common Purpose is an educational agenda at the K-12 level. It very well could be. But the Common Core is a basically USA-based term. But the same agenda is generally working all over the world, in particular the Western world. And so the era that they're fighting is state-sponsored education. The churches should be doing the education, the family, not the government. And so they need to find a way, wherever they live, to take their kids out of the state-sponsored schools and give them a Christian education. It may be harder in some other countries, like Germany, for example, because we know they have tried to suppress home education. But as bad as the USA is on so many fronts, one of the brightest spots is that there's several million children being homeschooled, and there's some growth in the Christian school movement, and there is a trend to move away from state-sponsored education. We have a lot of strong allies in this movement, and I can see a day, next decade, where we could really break their power over the culture and over the family by growing homeschooling and Christian schooling so large that we'd have changed the culture because we'd have a different type of citizen.
For home, now I noticed, excuse me, I noticed on your website that there's there's some links to homeschooling assets or websites for homeschooling. Who do you recommend? What resource do you recommend for those people interested in homeschooling their children?
Well, boy, that's a tough one. One of the problems that we have, it's a sad thing to have to tell you, is that as we are urging people to leave and flee the government schools and go into Christian schools, that some of the curriculum groups are actually have adopted and aligned themselves with the Common Core initiative, and it's pretty shocking to know that. And in a lot of the ACSI, that's the largest private Christian school association, evangelical. They have about 3,000 schools in the USA, and maybe worldwide about 10,000. And this is a very solid group of Christian people, lovely Christian people, born-again Christians, generally very conservative on theology, but a lot of their schools are adopting or aligning themselves with the Common Core initiative, and it's really upsetting a lot of their families. This is a very harmful agenda. Now, why would they do that? Well, the ACSI 3,000 schools, if your community has a private Christian school, the chances are good that it could be affiliated with ACSI. That stands for Association of Christian Schools International. Or it could be associated with CSI, which is mostly Upper Midwest. They're the two large groups. Then you have smaller groups that are better on this topic. That would be ACCS. That's the Association of Classical and Christian Schools, and they will not align with Common Core. And then you have a lot of your a smaller association called the AACS, American Association of Christian Schools. A lot of those are independent Baptist fundamentalists, and they do not align with Common Core. And then I'm giving you kind of the history, because you have to look at your Christian schools and see what they're doing, because some of them are actually aligning. Then you have a group called FACE, Foundation for American Christian Education. Those are called your principal approach Christian schools, and they are not aligned and will not align with Common Core. But the last three groups I named are much smaller in number, maybe having 200-300 member schools, whereas ACSI, that's the large evangelical group, has 3,000 plus schools in the USA. So I would urge your people to, check with your local Christian school and be sure they're not aligned. We're discovering, to our chagrin, as we go about, that many of the ACSI schools are aligned. In some cases, they're sort of doing it in a clandestine way. I hate to say that, but they're being a little deceptive and not fessing up to it. Now, they do this because they're aligned with regional accrediting associations, and these are secular groups. And so they actually have signed contracts with these groups, like Advanced Ed, and as a result, they have to conform to what these groups, these regional secular associations are doing, and they're trying to impose this agenda on schools. So I think the only way these schools, Christian schools, are going to get free is they're going to have to separate themselves and not affiliate with these groups. But then they're afraid that it may detrimentally affect the graduates of these private Christian schools getting into colleges and universities. So they're using this Common Core agenda to pin us down and pin us in and trap us. In the movie, I described the moment in which we live is like all the children in America in a prison. But this is a unique prison, very unusual prison. The doors are wide open, and they're not locked, and anybody can get up and walk out of the prison anytime they want. But they may think they can. They don't leave. They say, we can't afford Christian school. We can't homeschool, but they can leave. And they may be psychologically beaten down and afraid, but they can leave. But there's the left has a plan, the socialists have a plan that they're going to have a lockdown, where you know what a lockdown in a prison is, where the cells are locked and you can't even get out of your cell. And they're planning a lockdown, and then what they're going to do is they're going to try to prevent us, from advancing to college through the SAT, because it's going to be normed to Common Core. And they're going to try to control the jobs. If you haven't gone through their system of indoctrination, you won't be employable. This is the long-term plan, and I think they're going to try to unfold this in the next decade, if not sooner. But if we break away now in enough numbers by the millions and go to the promised land of Christian schooling and homeschooling and break away from their system, we can break their power, at least over our children and over our families. So we have to be careful even in the Christian school arena, and we do have some of the curriculum companies are buying into Common Core, and that's a real tragedy, and it's quite amazing. Let me name a couple that are not.
Okay.
Because you can go on, an order curriculum, and some of these groups have online education, and we can recommend ABECA, which is a huge program down in Pensacola, affiliated with Pensacola Christian Academy, and they have an ABECA Academy, and I think they have upwards to 100,000 children homeschool or enrolled in their online program, and they are definitely not affiliated and will not buy into the Common Core agenda. Alpha Omega, AOP, rejects Common Core and will not align with it. Classical Conversations, Foundation for American Christian Education, which I mentioned earlier, the NOAA Plan. Another one which we recommend strongly is Freedom Project Education, that's FPE, and they do a good job and are not affiliated or aligned with Common Core. If people want to check out the curriculum and some of the schools on this particular area, Tina Hollenbach has a group called Homeschool Resource Roadmap, and her webpage is www.hsroadmap.org. That's www.hsroadmap.org. And she has done extensive analysis into hundreds of Christian schools and Christian curriculum to see which ones are aligned. Then some have just adopted it. And so they're bringing the Common Core, trying to push it into the Christian schools, and some are just naive and gullible enough to buy it. I was talking to a Christian educator here in this city recently, and they made a comment that as long as it doesn't impugn upon the gospel, maybe it would be okay to adopt Common Core. I was just horrified. I could not believe I was hearing it. And so I've been around the Christian school movement for years, decades. My wife taught for a number of years in 2 private Christian schools in this community, and she was on the head of the English department in one of the largest private Christian schools in this state, which is an ACSI-affiliated school. And I have found over the years that the Christian educators in Christian schools can be some of the most gullible, naive people I've seen. They love the Lord. They really want to serve Christ. They love Jesus, but they are just gullible and naive when it comes to the intentions of government and state to oppress them and force conformity on their schools. And people are public schools going to the Christian schools thinking they're getting away from it. In some cases, they're walking right into maybe a less egregious version of Common Core, but they are going into it. So your listeners need to put pressure on their local Christian schools and find out if they have adopted or aligned themselves with the Common Core agenda.
Okay. Very, very well said. Very important. Go ahead, Joe.
If we can, Mr. Moore, just a few issues. I want to ask you, and you can just say yes or no, if these issues are related to the Common Core curriculum, global warming or the man-made climate change push.
Yes. Now, initially, they were talking about language arts and mathematics. Those are the two. But, yes, we believe that is part of it, and they're going to try to use that as part of the instruction in science. Okay.
Abortion?
Yes, I haven't seen any specific thing, but that is being taught in the. I can't answer maybe that specifically, but science. They're working on science curriculum now, and also social studies. We do. I might want to add. David Coleman is one of the co-creators and has given credit for being the principal architect of Common Core around 2009. He worked with Achieve Incorporated, and that's a movie. But in 2013, he shifted over to become president of the College Board, which creates the SAT, Scholastic Aptitude Test, which is a college entrance exam. And most Christian schools use this, and they also create the Advanced Placement Exam, AP exam, and these are widely used in all the public schools, but also at the private Christian schools. And there's a very, very important article in World Magazine. That's the leading evangelical news magazine in the country. It was a September 5th issue, 2015. And I think your listeners could Google this. It's called Testing the Limits by Warren Cole Smith. He's the vice president of World Magazine, and he talks about the College Board standardized tests and how they are making those Common Core aligned. And he starts off the article like this. This is in Social Studies. Who was more important? This is the lead paragraph. Who was more important in the development of America? A, and this would be a question on an AP exam test. A, Benjamin Franklin, or Harvey Milk? B, Harvey Milk. If you chose printer and statesman Benjamin Franklin, who helped draft the Declaration of Independence and now has his face on $100 bills, you are right. But if you want to do well on the new advanced placement examination in American history, you better know about homosexual activist Harvey Milk. So that's how they're realigning the test. And it's frightening because if you take an AP test in a school, the teachers have to prepare the students because they get college credit, and they can opt out of maybe freshman history when they get to university. But the tests are the instruction is so terrible when it comes to true American history. They're cutting out the founders and bringing in these socialists and communists and homosexual activists. And if he takes time away from preparing them for the test, and they can't pass the test, but if he doesn't teach them about Washington and Jefferson and Franklin, then they get a distorted view of American history. So this is a real crisis, and David Coleman is now head of College Board, and he's a graduate of Bennington College in Vermont, which is his mother was the president. It's pretty much a Marxist institution. He's a Rhodes Scholar, which is a very leftist program. So they've got us coming and going. And there's a lot of talk, it hasn't happened yet, where Christians and conservatives are going to have to create another college entrance exam because our kids won't be able to pass these college entrance exams unless they've been completely brainwashed. And so it's a serious problem. This is a very important article in World Magazine called Testing the Limits, September 5th, by Warren Cole Smith. Validates everything we're saying in our movie.
Mr. Moore, a couple similar questions from the audience about secession. They ask if the southern states or states secede from the Union, if they would be able to take back the educational aspect of this, getting the children away from the government-controlled schools.
Well, let me jump in here. Education was never a federal.
No.
Constitutionally a federal platform. It was.
They're
always
asking
the states.
if secession could be an answer. I know that's a.
Well, I really wouldn't want to comment on that, except to say that the South is not much better off than parts of the North. I mean, people think that we're doing the right thing down here, but we have Common Core in our schools, and it's not a federal problem. It's a national problem. Some of the worst leftists in public education live next door to you. The cancer has metastasized, so there's no talking about local control. A lot of people say, we need to get back to state control of education. I don't want the state of South Carolina, the state of Alabama, the state of Texas running schools. They need to get completely out of that. The government needs to get out of it at all levels. It's not going to be fixed. They're the one, the states are doing as bad a job as the federal government, even though it would be nice if we could repeal the Department of Education in Washington, but it's happening at the state level. What's happening with Common Core, there's so much pushback that a lot of the states are repealing the core at the federal level, and they're renaming it and adopting the same general program at the state level, and then they say we've done away with Common Core, which is not true. They've actually adopted the comparable program at the state level. So then everybody relaxes and says, well, we're good. Our schools are good. I can send Johnny back to the public school. And it takes the poor conservatives and Christians another 5 years to wake up that they've been duped again. So we got to get out of that system.
It's like playing whack-a-mole with the it's crazy, and it's interesting that you point out that the two of the five primary founders, if you will, of the Common Core, Jason Zimba, David Coleman, Rhodes Scholars, both of them. And, of course, folks, you hear, at least when I was growing up, my mom, boy, wouldn't it be nice, or you should strive to be a Rhodes Scholar. And I thought, I held that in high esteem, Rhodes Scholarship. Oh, must be something really cool. Yeah, folks, if you don't know what Rhodes Scholarship is, what you have to do, who you have to be, the lineage and such, and and the practical stuff, please research being a Rhodes Scholar. Please research that. But anyway, Rhodes,
David Coleman, in my judgment, is one of the most important, bad men in America, but nobody knows who he is. He was a co-architect of Common Core for several years, and now he's head of College Board. And so they're going to use the SAT and the AP exams for their agenda, and he's in charge of that. So it's a really insidious thing, and it affects the private Christian schools and homeschoolers as well.
Wow.
Because they take these tests.
Yeah, exactly. Mr. Moore, in the waning moments, the time that we have left, and folks, you're listening to Ray Moore, retired lieutenant colonel, Exodus Mandate, ExodusMandate.org and ExposingCommonCore.com, the latter for the DVD, and of course the former for information, which you got a very good, very, very great site, by the way. But in the waning moments here, what would you urge anyone listening to this broadcast, living within the shores of within the boundaries of America? What can they do? What should they do if they've got children in the school system tomorrow? They wake up. What should they do?
Well, Christians and conservatives are really, really stirred up about the country. It seems to be we're in a slow collapse of some kind, and they're reaching out trying to fight back in some way. Well, the best way they can fight back, and the easiest decision to make, and the one that will have the greatest long-term impact, is getting their children out of these pagan, godless, atheistic schools, and know that this is an obedience to Christ's question. The Scriptures don't give them permission to leave their children in harm's way. Give their children a Christian education in homeschooling or Christian schooling. Be aware of the quality of the Christian schools. I've already mentioned that.
Right. And
raise up a new generation. In Exodus 2, it says there was a Pharaoh arose who did not know Joseph. And so the children of Israel came under real oppression, and they were being persecuted, and they were really suffering. And it says that a man, I think Jochebed was his name, he was the father of Moses, and a man of the house of Levi went and took a daughter of Levi. The woman conceived and bore a son, and when she saw that he was a beautiful child, she hid him 3 months. And when she could no longer hide him, she took an ark of bulrushes for him and dabbed it with asphalt and put the child in it and laid it by the river's edge. And her sister stood far off to see what would be done to him. 1977, my wife, very shaky and timidly and fearful, took our firstborn son and put him in a little papyrus basket down by the river's edge, homeschool papyrus basket. And we went back to check, and we saw thousands of little baskets floating in the water. The best way to fight back against this pagan, godless, Christ-hating culture is to raise up a godly generation. And that is happening now, but not fast enough and not strong enough. So urge your listeners, I know the quality of the audience that you have, this is a fight we can win. And if we don't do it, we will lose everything.
Thank you. Well said. And folks, go to ExodusMandate.org. That's ExodusMandate.org. And, they've got a social networking. Well, they're on Facebook. Follow, like them on Facebook. Follow them, okay?
We have a good volunteer network nationally, and even working in some overseas places. So anybody wants to contact us and help us, we'll send them literature and sign them up to be a worker. And urge them to go to escapingcommoncore.com if they want to order copies of the movie.
Okay, and don't forget, folks, 5 people. I'm going to extend that to 8, the total of 8, so 3 more people.
All right, I'll grab those.
So,
and folks who entered, I did send out the first 5 winners email confirmations that they were the first 5.
Right.
So I'll do that with the next 3.
All right, that sounds good. Well, Mr. Moore.
I am so grateful to be on the show.
I'll tell you,
it's wonderful.
Well, I've learned so much from this DVD, and I've learned a lot from listening to you tonight. And, we've got to fight, don't we? I mean, we cannot give up. This is our children that we're fighting for. I'm angry at what I've learned from Common Core, from the DVD. I'm just very upset with this. But we need to get out there in front of this. Mr. Moore, thank you so much for being part of our program tonight. I cannot thank you enough. Please stop back in and let's continue our discussion at some future time. And I just want to thank you so much for all the research you've done.
Thank you. Appreciate what you guys are doing. Y'all are really sounding the alarm, and I know you're reaching out all over the world. It's pretty exciting.
Amen. Thank you. All right, brother. God bless. Until next time, you stay safe, and we'll talk soon. Folks, that was E. Ray Moore, Moore, ExodusMandate.org. That's ExodusMandate.org. Also for the DVD, EscapingCommonCore.com, EscapingCommonCore.com, and ladies and gentlemen, I've got a DVD right here. Maybe you can see me. Let me see. Can you see me? All right, there we go. I'm not sure what camera's on. Anyway, there it is. Okay, Escaping Common Core. This is the DVD. It's well worth the time. 2 hours or an hour roughly of our runtime. But man, I'll tell you, you think you know it, but you don't. Until you see that. And I can't think of anything more. It really got me how the globalists, the Fabian. See, this is an article I'm writing too about the Fabian socialist and the communist. The agenda is the same, or the objectives are the same. The operations of both parties, folks. The Fabian socialists are for incremental changes. The communists don't care. They just want to subjugate the nation and subjugate everyone into a new world, one world order system of governance. And what really, and I felt I was like, wow, when I saw this DVD, and I considered myself to be well informed about the battles being waged by the communists and the Fabian socialists. But what I missed was the importance. And I thought Common Core is just kind of like a top-heavy bureaucratic alternative style of teaching, and where 2 + 2 could equal 5 if you argue the point long enough. But it's not. This is a battle for the heart, soul, and minds of our most precious resource, and that makes me very angry, and it really draws me to action. It really. When you start talking about our kids, now now this is an entirely different level. When you start messing with the kids, children, most precious assets, now the battle is at a different level. And Hillary Clinton, and that slime bucket, Melissa Harris Perry, man, I'm glad I wasn't armed when I watched that DVD. Melissa Harris Perry talking about, it's the responsibility or whatever. The children belong to the collective. What a Marxist puke. I mean, really. What a Marxist piece of... really?
And tomorrow, the presidential debates are happening, correct?
Yeah, it's bread and circuses tomorrow night if you want to go.
I heard Jeb Bush today come out. Gun ownership is not a guaranteed right.
Who?
Jeb Bush.
Gun ownership?
And that's me paraphrasing. That's not his exact words.
So the Second Amendment to the Constitution is just BS. It's just written it's just written there for nothing, right?
Yeah.
That's what according to Jeb Bush.
Yeah,
but it doesn't matter,
find
right?
it here. There's no national right to gun ownership.
Right. Okay.
And,
so the Constitution is just a GD piece of paper, right? That must be what is. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm fired up.
Folks, we're going to break. Back with
Got the
Stan
hook.
Deo. You're listening to the Hagmann Hagmann Report on this Tuesday, September 15th, 2015, on Global Star Radio Network. Stan Deo's up next for our third and final hour. Stay with us.
Listening to those watching on YouTube, stand by. You're going to hear some dead air. And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to this Tuesday edition of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. It is Tuesday, September 15th, 2015, the end of Jade Helm today. And, of course, tomorrow, the bread and circuses of the presidential debates. And, you can keep it on in the background while you're listening to our show. If it depends what you want to do. Folks, before we get to our third hour guest, Mr. Stan Dale from standale.com. I just want to mention this: American Survival Wholesale. We talked about survival401k.com last hour. AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com. This hour, of course, you can piggyback your IRA or 401k with American Survival Wholesale Foods. That's pretty interesting. Indeed. Visit AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com. That's AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com for all things survival related, including the best tasting survival food out there. Also, HealthMasters.com. That's HealthMasters.com. You don't want to feel punky during the collapse, do you? No, HealthMasters.com. They have got the best supplements in the world, in my view. I've taken many, and there's really... it's the best. Also, Breakthrough Health, a book at healthmasters.com. It's the last health book I think you'll ever need. That's just my personal opinion. So, AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com and healthmasters.com. Now, Joe, a very special guest tonight as well. Our usual Tuesdays with Stan Dale from standale.com. And just a tremendous guy.
Yeah, and we... him and Holly, his wife Holly, for those of you who might not know Stan, have been doing, informing others of what's been happening for decades. Stan's a physicist. He's the real Indiana Jones, they call him. He is an inventor, an explorer, a scientist, a physicist, a genius, all the things you want. And Holly is just as great of a partner for Stan, and she's written the encyclopedia, the Bible of survival, if you will, Dare to Prepare, and they were gracious enough to give away to 10 winners copies of Dare to Prepare. And if you go to standale.com, on the top of the website, September 15 giveaway winners are listed. Do you want to announce them on air, Stan, or you just want people?
Sure,
Okay.
I'll do that. We've got 3 of them here that we haven't heard back from for their mailing address yet, and we've given them till the midnight the 17th to give us the address, or we'll draw someone else in their place. But we had just under 900 entries, and we've heard back from 7 that we've notified of the 10. The first one is Sid, last name begins with an R, in Pinedale, Wyoming. James C., last name starts with a C, in Chino Valley, Arizona. We had Tim, last name starts with a D, in Prospect Park, Pennsylvania. And Daniel, last name starts with a K, in Rock Hill, South Carolina. Amanda, last name starts with a B, in Camas, Washington. The reason we don't give the whole name, guys, by the way, is just not to, intrude on the privacy of these people that have won. This just to let them know and friends of theirs know that they have won. Lynn, last name H, we don't have an address on Lynn yet. Charisse, last name starts with an R, no address yet. And then Dina, last name starting with a C, in Hurst, Texas. And somebody from our home state here in Aurora, Colorado, Andrea, last name starts with a D. And then Doug, last name starting with an A. No address for him either. But anyway, there are the 10 winners, as promised. And as we've explained on there, we will begin shipping their books out on the 28th when the new stocks roll off the press, along with the DVD set and the CD-ROM and the 3D glasses that we included in that package. Okay, and that's the winners, and I'm certainly got good feedback from a lot of these people, even though they didn't win. And from the winners that have replied, we also got good feedback, so everybody's happy.
Great. Fantastic. All right. Well, just go to standale.com. That's standale.com. Right on our document cam right now. Cosmic Conspiracy, The Cosmic Conspiracy, written by Stan Dale. Our document cam. I got to switch it. There we go. There we go. And Dare to Prepare. Now,
Where'd you find the Cosmic Conspiracy? I was looking for that today.
I've had it at my desk.
All right.
So anyway.
Great book. This is the 10th edition, I believe we have.
What
the Cosmic Conspiracy?
That's a final edition, 2010.
Yeah. It's an awesome book.
Yeah, indeed it is. All right.
We've sold that in over, 22, maybe 24 countries, English-speaking countries in the world, and in English and French and German. So it's made the rounds as well.
Wow, fantastic. All right. Well, Stan, during the break we asked you, what's going on, and of course, I was surprised to hear. Well, take us where you want us to take us in order of importance. Where you think what we should know.
What were we talking about during the break? I forget.
The dormant sun.
Yeah.
Or sun.
Oh yeah. Well, that's reasonably important. Yes. Look, there's been growing controversy over whether the sun is going to, in this next solar cycle, 25, after 24 finishes, obviously, if we're going to see more sunspots and heated up sun. And certainly I've been on the side of saying, watch the sun. Don't believe that it's going to go quiet. But there is, growing evidence from numerous sources at NASA and NOAA that the magnetic fields of the north and southern hemisphere of the sun are aligning to a point where they haven't in maybe 400 years. And this can produce, statistically, a cold period of, at least one solar cycle, maybe more, like it did in the late 1600s, what's called the Maunder minimum. And during that time, it was so cold on Earth that the River Thames froze up so thick that they were holding, like bazaars, selling, food and treats and stuff out on the frozen River Thames year-round. It was just frozen solid. Now, nowadays, you'd think that with all the, aircraft and shipping and stuff that we have established, that should we enter into a global freeze zone, like a Maunder minimum, that even though it might hurt crops and crop production and hence lead us to potential famine, that we should be able to handle it by redistributing food from these various sources of food production here in the States or in Europe and Russia. Sadly, however, I don't think that's going to happen because we're getting hit here in the United States, which supplies a lot of other countries with food, and the global political situation is not going to make it conducive to sharing food around the world. I mean, if we go into a World War III over Israel in the next few months or a year, you can see how it's going to impact trade negotiations between countries. We're not going to be too happy about sending our food resources overseas. Now, anyway, so watch the sun. Here's what we got to look for. In the early part of this year, we were seeing a number of coronal mass ejections just every 2 or 3 days. In fact, we talked about it on the show, and I put up images and animations showing these tremendous flares and coronal mass ejections, and some of them almost hitting the Earth, one of them clipping the Earth. Looking out for the one that might bring that super-duper coronal mass ejection and solar wind impact, which would produce an electromagnetic pulse that would wipe out, digital and computing and high-tech equipment all over the planet at once. I mean, it's like 100 times what an atom bomb would do parked over, the United States. So we're talking about a potentially big thing. Well, for that to happen now, it's going to have to be a surprise. Because if the sun keeps being stable like this, we're going to see no sunspots. Obviously, we're seeing a very minimal number now. And we're on the downhill slope of this 24 solar cycle for sunspots. So that means that for the next 2 or 3 years, we're not going to see anything coming back up, in sunspot counts normally. But I come back to the book of the Revelation of John and the factors that do point at a solar event which surrounds the sun with a cloud, darkens the sun. The moon turns the color of red because of the darkness of this cloud surrounding the sun. That also comes from Isaiah as well. But and looking at Revelation where it says that, a third part of the green grass and the oceans and fish and trees are going to be burned up by the super bright sun. And we've discussed this on the show before. I think this is going to be a sudden event which will hit the third of the planet that's affected by facing directly toward the sun when this large eruption or whatever it is from the sun occurs. That would be anomalous behavior, and it might not be a calm, cool sun like the proponents of this ice age theory or Maunder minimum type theory are saying. Right now, it's anybody's guess, and the scientific community is pretty well equally divided about whether we're going to see more heat from the sun, more coronal mass ejections and flares, or whether we're going to see it just calm down completely and put us back into the moderate minimum and create famines across the planet from that. I do think that we are going to see a coronal mass ejection causing an EMP on the Earth so great that it will wipe out all of our high-tech stuff that's not hardened, to withstand EMP, and probably even some of that's going to get wiped, because in the Bible, the prophecies of the Ezekiel war, or the Ezekiel's prophecy of the war of Magog coming down into Israel, and also into the war of Armageddon, they're talking about horses being ridden and chariots being pulled by horses, and low-tech type transports, which might indicate that all of our high-tech transports, cars, airplanes, ships, all that kind of stuff, have been immobilized because of this EMP damage. So, it's just a time to keep an eye on the sun and try to figure out what's coming and be prepared as you can be for an EMP wipeout of everything that we now use to communicate with and calculate with and shave with and drive with, and etc.
That's a bleak thought, really.
Well, yeah. I get looking back at that minimum, the historical records of it certainly was not a brilliant time. I mean, they didn't have the advantage of distributed power and coal and oil and gas, and pipelines. We won't have that either if it wipes out the pumping stations and things like that. So it's a time where we better look back in history and see what they did back then and prepare to get around that in our homes, because we're going to be reduced to every homeowner being kind of responsible for keeping warm and feeding his family.
Oh, man, yeah. Of all the things that really concerns me, I mean, I think we can withstand a lot. But an EMP, that would take out all of the electronics, regardless of its origins, to me, that would be the nightmare of nightmares.
Yeah, Holly got a note from a friend of ours named Brenda, and in the note, Brenda was telling Holly about a dream that she'd had about a violent storm in the dream. And, Brenda has a dream maybe once every 10 years or something, kind of like I do, not too often, but they're pretty, accurate type things. And she saw that a storm occurring in the atmosphere, and with thunder and lightning and like the colors of the rainbow in the atmosphere, like the northern lights splashing around, mainly reddish, which can be part of the northern lights, reds and greens. And there was a windstorm sweeping across the earth, and it was so fast that everyone was in danger who was outside shelter. Now, this reminds me of what Major Ed Dames, he has said in the past on the Coast to Coast AM show, and not that I support Ed Dames' forecast, but he did warn probably, 10 or 12 years ago on the show that there is coming a time, he'd remote viewed it with his team, and there's coming a time when there's going to be severe several 100-mile-an-hour winds sweeping across the planet and knocking down trees and sounding like, generally speaking, microbursts all over the planet. Now that I don't think will happen unless the sun triggers it, by heat and by sudden heat, which would generate these multiple colors and thunder and lightning because of the proton impacts in our atmosphere. Just a number of things do make this woman's dream vision sound kind of really plausible. So Holly's put it up, and it's really weird because Holly hadn't talked to this lady in years, and she was thinking about it the other day, and come to find out that woman didn't just send her this email about the dream, and Holly opened it today. And Holly was saying, well, I need a picture to kind of show people what this dream is about. So she went on the the Google search engine and looked around and found pictures you'll see there with a small family, and his wife and a baby and an older child standing next to him out in a field with thunder and lightning out in the clouds, or lightning anyway, and an angel in the clouds looking down on him. Well, now, Holly put that up, and Brenda says, where'd you get that picture, such an interesting picture. It really kind of fits what the dream was I had. So Holly went to look it up and found out that it was painted by a guy named Danny Hagmann, and he named the picture The Coming Storm, which is exactly what her dream's about and what Holly was calling this, the article, The Coming Storm. And here was that painting, and that's what it was called, which is all quite coincidental. On the same day all this is happening. It's worth a read. The woman's dream is there, and what she got from it is there as well, Brenda Newland. And so if you read that article, you can get to it by going to our website and scrolling down underneath the hot headlines that flash of fire across the website. Or if you're already on our show images page, you can click on the second row in the middle picture, and that'll take you straight to the same article. So that all kind of fits together what we're talking about with the sun and weather and changes and, winds.
All right. And for the people watching us live on YouTube, you're lucky enough to have right now on your screen that photograph, The Coming Storm Prophecy. What an interesting, that painting, the artistic rendition. What a painting. Oh, my goodness. Not a photograph, but a painting. Again, The Coming Storm.
Look, I still think that, as this dream says, that we may see a few, uncomfortable things in the environment, the church may before it's raptured out of here. But I think somewhere close to the beginning, or after the beginning of the 7-year tribulation period, that the church will be raptured out. The more I study in the last week or two, I've studied with a number of courses by like John Hagee and Perry Stone and others, and done my own studies, and I do think we can be encouraged that before it gets really bad, as it's starting to get bad, the church will be protected and eventually delivered in what is called the rapture, caught up into clouds. I can't explain to you because I'm told not to, but I have had a dream vision that showed me about that time and was told just to keep it to myself, which I'm doing. So believe me, we are going to see that day come where we'll be protected and taken out of here.
All right. Well, during the break, you were talking about the Middle East, too. Oh, go ahead. Oh, all right. You mentioned about the Middle East. I was just getting hand signals over here, Joe. Talking about the events or ongoings on in the Middle East. What's caught your attention this week? Or if I can, before I ask you that question, or before you get into that question, let me back up a little bit here. What do you think, what do you see, Stan, and I haven't had a chance to really ask you this and drill down for your answer. What do you see with the Pope's arrival here in the United States, meeting with Obama, then the Congress, and the United Nations? What do you see taking place during that time period?
Well, you mean between the administration and the Pope? Or just generally across the planet at that time?
I guess what I'm concerned with here, and I think out of all of the events, geopolitical events that are taking place right now, I think to me, this has got me really riled. Perhaps one of the most important events taking place right now is the Pope coming over here, because I can see him solidifying this new world order agenda based on climate change, or this business of climate change, and really things getting just all of a sudden like turning on a dime, and here we go. We're now full-blown socialist, one world, new world order, kind of heading down that path. And I think the Pope is going to bring this in, or at least do much to start it. It might not happen the day after he leaves, but it'll be well on its way. What do you think about this?
Well, when there's a number of things happening. When you mentioned socialist world, it immediately turned my attention to Bernie Sanders, who's the obvious super socialist who's trying to oust Clinton for the Democratic leadership of the party, to run for president. If that is the case, we may see the Pope coming over and saying, "You guys, elect Sanders." That's the order to whoever's in the world order at this time. And what you're talking about, the Pope's platform is for sustainable development for the planet. And, I've gotten so many emails from your listeners here over the last week about this, about how obvious it is that the Pope is over here to begin forming the New World Order, where they're going to eliminate poverty and hunger for the people of the entire planet. And if you look at this socialist, Sanders, I mean, and his platform for what he wanted to redistribute wealth and to make sure that no one went hungry and everyone had a job that paid well, and all the sickness and medical care was given to everybody for free, free education. When you look at that $17 trillion package, and you realize this is only going to work if you have a global government that will fund that kind of stuff, then you see that we are being forced into that by the Pope's Sustainable Development Package, which goes a lot further than anything but faith and religion. He's looking at taking care of the planet, resource consumption at a sustainable level, and then I can see that he's going to go into birth control somehow or another, because he's going to have to cut down the population demand on resources. And the Pope is basically saying a lot of things that Sanders has got in his platform.
That's true.
Well, anyway, so I see that being the highlight of the news at that time. And, this heads of state meeting, when is that? That's 25th and 27th this month, I think, in New York. But between now and then and after then, we are in a very precarious position in the Middle East for the eruption of war between Israel and Iran, and then supporting Arab countries that will back Iran. In fact, there's a rabbi in Israel, Rabbi Amram Vaknin, and he has predicted. He said he's had a vision from the next world. The heavens or God, depending on how you interpret what he said, that we're going to have war break out between Islam and Israel, between the Muslims and Israel. And, he says that they're going to poison the water, contaminate the water and the fruits and the vegetables there, the Muslims are, and damage electricity flow in Israel. People will be dying in the streets, thousands of people all over Israel. And, he's urging the Israeli water company, electric company, and food to be prepared for these attacks on their resources. Now, with that kind of talk, and with the Pope going over to meet with our guys here in New York, you can see that the stage is set for something we've been talking about all along, the initiation of a global world order, which will be suddenly approved once Israel strikes Iran, a preemptive strike, and the world thinks that we're at the beginning of a nuclear holocaust of the planet. People's representatives and people will be ready to accept a new world order and make Israel sign a peace treaty if they won't attack anybody else with their nuclear weapons. And, I'm sure they'll make some kind of a deal with Israel that Israel will probably accept. But this will happen after Israel beat the crud out of the invading armies, probably from the Russians and the Germans helping the Arab nations to attack Israel from the north, in the Gog-Magog thing. It's going to just cry out for a global world order to save the planet, and people will buy that, and they will say, yes, let's have it at whatever cost, peace and safety. And that's what I see this Pope's visit kicking off. It's just the beginning, and one of the largest religions on the planet, he's in charge of that, or leading it, or whatever you want to call it. And his voice is going to carry a lot of weight all over the planet.
Yeah. Yes, it is. And the timing of the Pope's visit here with the United Nations push for their post-2015 agenda, then the 2030 agenda. We have our president pushing for executive actions on climate change and everything that includes climate change, from carbon emissions to factories restrictions, and another Solyndra type company failed. The green energy companies that so much taxpayer money went into, billions of dollars through Solyndra was wasted. There was another huge company, government-sponsored tech company, green tech company that died a few weeks back, and it's just a joke. That they say that they want clean water, they want clean air. They're the ones that have always been polluting it. They're the ones that continue to poison it, and not just from pollutants that emit from cars and CO2 machines, but they physically put fluoride in the water. They physically put heavy metals in the air. They physically put the poison in the food. So it's such a joke to me that they want to push this socialist utopia on people. And Dad, you have a picture on the show there yesterday where it talks about the liberalism, the liberal utopia, free food, free housing, equal employment. It's a prison. It's exactly what it is. It is a prison. One of the things that made this country great was a free market, a true market. And the Pope talks against capitalism a lot. But Stan, is he really talking about capitalism, or is he talking against crony capitalism that has been eroded and destroyed through the laws and policies of our government?
What is coming is something that the communists have been planning for a long time, and this Pope is certainly moving that direction. It won't be pure socialism, nor or communism, nor capitalism. Now, the type of socialism that he is proposing, and others behind him, is this. You have opposing concepts of how to run a nation or a world. You have the communist, where the state owns and distributes, and you have capitalism, where the individual owns and shares, allegedly with those around him. These are diametrically opposed, and it's going to be a synthesis of the two. They're going to be merged together to form a type of socialist government, which will be a dictatorship across the planet. But people will not ordinarily say, come and be a dictator like Hitler or, Alexander the Great or whatever. They will want to have what is coming to avoid problems that will be facing them in the news, in the media, from the environment, from the cost of living, from loss of income, from the collapse of the dollar. There will be a number of factors, including the nuclear war for sure, or the threat of it, that will force people to look for a solution, and this will be offered, not mandated onto the people of Earth, but offered as a solution to our problems. And that is what the Pope is doing. He's moving into that middle ground where the capitalism and communism merge, just as the fathers of communism said would happen. Thesis, antithesis, and then synthesis between the two. It has just been going chop, 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 step, step, step since the early 1900s, and we're now at a point where it's just racing to a finish, where we're going to have this new global government, which will be a socialist dictatorship.
That's right. Yeah, and I think we're acceleration. That's the word of the day, or the word of the year. I think we're racing toward this agenda. Let's see here. All right.
Like the final birth pangs of a woman in labor. It's not Braxton Hicks contractions now, then it's getting ready for the serious delivery.
Braxton Hicks. Any dads out there remember that? All right. Mom's probably
been to those classes, have you?
Yeah, real thing. Anyway, that's wow. Where is I going now with this? Oh, well, speaking of the contractions and birth pangs, 266 days, and is the. Stan, we talked about this. That's the length of time for a normal pregnancy, right? 266 days, and that happens to be the date when the Pope is going to be speaking to the UN, and it's 266 Pope, I believe, right? Or am I wrong?
Yeah, 266 Pope.
Yeah, all those numbers adding up are being the same, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, you can't make this stuff up, and people scoff, saying, well, there's got to be, I mean, it's all coincidence. Well, you know what I call you folks? Coincidence theorists. That's what I call you folks.
Well, look, anybody that's read the Bible knows that the God that Israel worships and that we worship as Christians is a God of patterns. There's a special harmonic relationship, a pattern of repeats. If you do or you don't do such in cycles and seasons and feast days, everything is in patterns of sevens or threes. And you see that. And so when we look at numbers of 266 now, then all we're doing is trying to do, from our perspective, what God has put into the Bible in those longer sequences.
Right.
Yeah.
In September. What do you think of September, Stan? I mean, obviously, talking about you had gone over in a couple of programs ago all of the convergence, things converging in the month of September and then beyond. But specifically now, how are you feeling right now with things?
Nervous. I don't think we're at this point going to see a meteor impact. According to NASA anyway, but that's come and gone. The timing on that, but the guy didn't say whether it was this year, next year, whatever, according to what he said. But he has said that before. The problems I see in September really all hinge around what the Pope would be meeting with the nations about at the UN. These various crisis curves, and we don't have a crisis curve like Ebola or some pandemic at the moment. We don't have, famine worldwide yet. We don't have a collapse of the U.S. dollar and the global currency market yet. We are kind of precariously teetering on the edge of that. We did see a 10 to 12% drop of the share market since February this year till now. But they say it's recovering. Anybody's guess, but that's one of the crisis curves that may collapse. May be upon us suddenly if Israel makes a preemptive military strike against Iran in the next few weeks. Honestly, I don't see how they lasted this long, Netanyahu and his cabinet, attacking Iran, because the powers that be of the New World Order are surrounding them and just squeezing the life out of Israel with everything they're taking from them, including land and divisions and ownership and protection and rights to use nuclear weapons. Now, Israel has never signed the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, so that's good. But this is going to be a curve that will be very important to watch over the next few weeks, between now and the end of the year, between now and maybe the end of September. Lord only knows what criteria they're using in Netanyahu's office to decide when to make the strike, but they are going to have to. We see Russian troops, Russian aircraft, Russian equipment now being pushed into Syria to help fight, ISIS for Assad. But when you realize that Syria, part of it down that little tongue, the Golan Heights, is, where military equipment and stuff can slip right across there and be in northern Israel overnight. So you can see that if you're in Israel, you'd be sweating the Russians being that close. And also the commander of the Quds forces, Qasem Soleimani from Iran, that area now being free to go wherever he wants to because they lifted the travel restrictions on him when Obama, signed this treaty, this nuclear treaty with Iran. You've got one of the great leaders, military minds of the Arab world, sitting there with the Russians on the border of Israel, and I just feel it in my bones that Israel is going to have to strike soon. It has no choice.
Yeah,
but what's that going to look like?
I mean, that's a good question.
What is that going to look like? Is it going to be a surgical strike against the nuclear facilities, which we know that or
more militarily strike aimed toward military equipment and personnel, or would we just see civilian strikes, or just anywhere where they could hit?
I think Israel, Joe. I think Israel will be mindful of the civilian population.
I agree.
I think they will strike the nuclear facilities. Now, there are at least 12 types of nuclear facilities. Some are, reducing the uranium oxide in, concentrators. Others are actually building bombs to put on missiles, the Russian S-300s to launch across the border. There are about 8 of those 12 sites that should be taken out, or at least, made impossible to reach. And you either have to have a bunker buster bomb, one of these heavy, 30-ton jobbies, wherever it is, they will just go straight down into the earth and break up these subterranean concrete bunkers that they're building all this stuff in, or they will use a neutron bomb. And Israel does have advanced neutron bomb technology. It's called the real estate bomb.
See,
that
will bothers me. That takes out
the
neutron bomb. That takes out the life and right? Takes out every living thing except for the building.
Yeah, and it does within a radius of the concentration of the neutrinos and neutrons that come out of the bomb. But neutrinos, it depends on how many neutrinos it produces per cubic meter or whatever. But a neutrino stream will go through 12,000 Earths, without stopping.
Wow.
It'll go. And what I'm wondering is if they have this neutrino stream come out of a bomb over one of these nuclear sites in Iran, will it radiate out in like an inverse cone and thereby just be very weak by the time it goes through our planet to the other side and going on out? Or will it be a concentrated beam which will go straight down and wipe out the life on the base, underground base, and go through the center of the Earth and come out the other side and wipe out the Earth on the other, or the life on the other side of the Earth in that little target area?
What's on the other side? What's on the other side of the Earth?
Everybody, quick, grab your antipodal map and see what's happening.
Yeah, where's that globe?
Yeah, my dad and I have been reading and referencing a potential globalist publication of their plans leaked. I think it's called the Toronto Protocol from 67 and 85.
Did I give that back to you?
You have your copy.
Oh.
But it talks about the use of the electromagnetic weapons. It says here that the last stages are referred to as the Omega phase. Tested from the experiments carried out at the beginning of the 70s, they contained the implementation of a worldwide scale of electromagnetic weapons. They say the use of these electromagnetics will cause earthquakes, and industrial areas most important to state nations will continue to accelerate in an economic fall, etc., etc. But the electromagnetic weapons and the use of the electromagnetics will cause earthquakes in places that have weak fault lines or maybe dormant fault lines. Is this anything that you've heard of, the Omega phase, in reference to electromagnetic weapons, one? And two, how can electromagnetics affect earthquakes?
Well, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that was a long mouthful, wasn't it, Joe? The electromagnetics, the earthquakes are caused by a number of factors. Mechanically, they are by stresses built up between plates sliding over each other or sideways to each other. And there is an electrical component to some of them, which have, like quartz-bearing rock along the fault lines, and they produce ball lightning and various other phenomena as they're pressuring and from the piezoelectric effect, and then they release. But to cause it with electromagnetics, maybe they can do something with the molten subsurface area of our planet, just underneath the mantle. Maybe that can be thumped with a nuclear detonation somewhere on the other side of the planet that sends a shockwave around and it regathers at a point and triggers an earthquake that is poised to go anyway. Other than that, I'm not too sure how electromagnetics would affect that directly, the earthquakes, all of them anyway, the major kinds of them. By the way, the antipodal point of Iran is in the South Pacific Ocean, and it's, I'm just checking, it's in between New Zealand and Chile in South America, so it's in a safe place. So if they did use a neutron and neutrino-producing bomb in a concentrated beam, it would go out through the South Pacific and out into space and away.
So that might not be a bad idea then, if that could be done, right? I mean,
yeah. Again, you're asking questions. I'm talking about things that are all hypothetical because no one outside the Israeli intelligence organization knows what they've got in the back room for weapons.
Sure.
But we do know from reports that have been made public in the last year or two that they do have nuclear weapons and that they have apparently an advanced form of neutron bomb. Now, what we know beyond that is about zilch publicly.
What do you think? What would? Okay, so just playing this out just a tad, and I know this calls for speculation, but I guess that's the realm in which we live. Let's say Israel does make a move on Iran. What is the role of the United States going to be? And we've talked about this before, but any thoughts on that now?
Yeah, Donald Trump's come out and said since the Iran deal's been in place that now we would have to defend Iran in a situation like that. Also, which the terminology of the deal isn't public, so I don't know how he would know that. But yeah, go ahead.
Well, There are a number of factors. I think that the current administration of the White House is under the thumb of a much larger, kind of secret or quiet group of controllers, financiers, and whatever. And because of that, I know that they're going to be protecting the assets of, call them the powers that be or whatever, like the Rothschild family, Cheney, and a number of others that I talked about 2 or 3 shows back that own a huge oil field in the tip of the Golan Heights, and they've found deep oil there. So the United States will somehow or another be protecting that, which is part of Syria. So does that mean we'll put troops in Israel, or we'll put troops in Syria, in the Golan Heights to protect that oil field? And that might be the reason that we have troops in the area, ostensibly anyway. I don't know, but I don't think we can wait until Obama's out of office by election, and I'm not even sure that he will ever get out of office because of a crisis that will start in the Middle East, and elections here will just be declared not necessary because of national crisis or something like that. If he's still in power, I don't know what our U.S. Operations will actually be in the Middle East to support Israel. It'll be minimal support, whatever it is, and if anything, it'll only protect assets of various, globalists who have ownership in energy fields there. And certainly the one in the Golan Heights is of interest, and there's some off of, or inland off of the coast, west coast of Israel near Caesarea. And that field there is one that's going to produce deep oil wells, but I think the deepest ones will be in the Megiddo Plain, in the Megiddo Valley, the Jezreel Plain, where the Battle of Armageddon will be fought, and probably over oil. So those areas there in the northern part of Israel and in the Golan Heights will probably be protected as U.S. interest by troops in the United States or technology from the United States, something like that. I can't see them letting that go into the hands of the Russians or the Arab nations in that area.
Okay, wow.
Yeah, there's definitely tension over there. I saw Netanyahu talk about wanting to talk about with the Palestinians, not regarding a 2-state solution, but a peace accord or a peace deal of some kind. There also was talk about with the sanctions being lifted off Iran, the flow of money back into Iran by the billions, and that being funneled back into Hamas and Hezbollah to start a war in the West Bank. Have you heard anything along those lines, Stan?
Rephrase that.
The money that was the sanctioned money that the U.S. is now giving back to Iran, that some of the leaders have talked about funneling it back to Hezbollah and Hamas and starting a new fighting force in the West Bank, trying to start a new war in Gaza.
Okay, I get that now.
I thought that was covered in the press probably a week or two ago. But yeah, that's definitely going to happen if it's not already happening.
Wow. All right.
Yeah.
I want to say hello to Donna, by the way. Sorry, Stan. I just say hello to Donna's children, homeschooled, watching us live on our YouTube channel. God bless you and everyone watching us live on YouTube. I want to say welcome to our YouTube channel. That's the official Hagmann Hagmann channel. Definitely spread the word. And we've got your book right there, along with Holly's, on our document cam. Bada bing, there we go, folks, right there on studio, our document cam. And we're going to have a dog cam too. Our little pup, or a studio dog, made an appearance cameo again this evening. We bring her to the studio every day. So anyway, Stan, a little levity, but all right. And you know what? I couldn't help but notice. Cosmic Conspiracy. You wrote about a lot of this Middle Eastern tension in the Cosmic Conspiracy, and this is the final edition, 2010. Wow, I don't know. It's worth mentioning, folks. It's worth. It is a good book by Stan Dale.
It was way ahead of its time, and I didn't realize it. But so many people and authors, Christian authors, have picked up and developed more substantial, more detailed articles as time passed and events happened based on that the Cosmic Conspiracy. But I only look, I I had the out-of-body experience and in '69, and that's, I'm sure, what led me to the circumstances that made me produce that book, because I really hate to write, but I guess the good Lord wanted a foundation there to alert future watchmen, get together and tell people about all these things, and I'm so glad it's been done that way.
Perfect, perfect format. Stan, let's talk about Iran being on the short list with respect to enemies against the petrodollar. We know, the petrodollar issue. We know about Libya being taken out, some say, because they went off the petrodollar. They wanted gold-backed dinar. Same with other countries. What do you think about? I mean, what do you think about Iran and the petrodollar?
The Iranian petrodollar?
No, I mean the fact that Iran is going to saddle up probably with China, Russia, and other countries to go away from the U.S. petrodollar, or to.
I think that's definitely on the cards. We are very susceptible to what happens in China at the moment. China is trying to keep its economy from flatlining, and it's not reaching its 7% or so annual growth rate at all this year. The control of energy on the planet, the flow of energy, is true power, and China and Russia and Middle Eastern country, probably Iran with a consortium of Arab countries that will join with them, will form a bloc that will have their own currency. And Europe, United States, South America will all have to fall in line with that because they are the dominant economic forces, military forces on the planet now after Obama's gotten through collapsing what we used to have here.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, I think that we will see a new consortium, and I think that the basis, the backing for the new world dollar, whatever it's going to be, the new world economic electronic exchange unit, will be based on energy that various countries have. Like if they have coal resources, if they have oil resources, gas resources, solar resources, wind resources, whatever, these can be related to energy units that tell whether a nation, has something to export or, use, which is a valuable commodity. And so the new world exchange medium will be based on this, I'm pretty sure. And, of course, China, Russia, Iran, Arab nations, they're going to control what's left of the major energy deposits on the planet after America and Great Britain go down. And certainly they're going to do their best to finish us off shortly.
Very interesting. Back to the Pope's Stan, if we could, and his visit. This I wanted to ask you about. Maybe I'm not sure how familiar you are with Barack Obama being the first U.S. president to sit as the head of the UN Security Council while being a sitting president. And with the Pope coming to talk to Obama, speak to Congress and to the UN, could you see a situation where Obama could be at the helm of the Security Council while sitting as the president again, seeing that his first violation of the law brought no consequences?
Now, what you mean after his term expires, or
no?
Does it expire? What?
In 2009, he violated the Logan Act and sat on the UN Security Council while sitting as president, which is unconstitutional. What I'm asking is, while he's still president, say the Pope and it comes over and announces an agenda that the president is on board with and the government's on board with, and whether it's a Marxist, climate agenda, could you see him be in a spot where or even a Palestinian dividing Israel situation? Could you see him going back to the UN Security Council while sitting as president and making decisions like that? After he got away with the first one? Without
his track record is he's thrown away the Constitution, and what law he's going to set about changing the times for sure, and the law he just does what he wants to. So can I see that? Yeah, I mean if he's still in power, whether elected or otherwise, when that happens, I'm sure that he will do his best to sway the vote against Israel, so that Israel's divided at the United Nations level or the New World Order level or whatever they're going to call it.
Okay.
All right.
And I got a question here. I thought about yesterday as I was reading something. The festivals, feast days, and holidays, biblical holidays, are celebrated. And I think this one that's going to be celebrated is Yom Kippur. I'm not sure. Is
Yeah.
is figured out by the first sighting of the crescent moon after the new moon. Am I correct?
I don't know.
Well, from what I read yesterday, they did not see on the 13th the first part of the crescent moon, nor on the 14th. So today they declared it whatever it was, and that will be another holiday. Will be 10 days. I think Rosh Hashanah, and excuse me if I'm all screwed up with the actual holidays, but that pushed the dates back 2 days further from. It was supposed to be the 23rd. The 13th and the 23rd, and now it's the 15th and the 25th. I didn't know if you had read up on that and if that had implications in your mind.
Are you talking about Rosh Hashanah or are you talking about Yom Kippur? Yom Kippur begins September 22nd this year, and sunset, Rosh Hashanah, September 13th.
Okay, so those have no bearing on when the first sliver of the new moon is after the new moon is seen in Israel?
We had this discussion.
Well, there's something to do with the moon because the Jewish calendar is based on a lunar, cycle. Let me see here. Crescent. I'll just look it up while we're talking. I'm not sure exactly what they did. I ran across that the other day in something I was reading on the feast.
So
did we, and that led us to the conversation this weekend.
Yeah, I couldn't figure it out myself. Let's see.
Well, it's something we can look into for next week. We're not going to have time to get to the bottom of it here. It'll take it a moment. It'll take a bit of reading to catch up.
I just looked at the program clock, and we only have like 3 minutes left, for crying out loud.
All right, quickly. What have we got here? Things, we've already done that. Okay. One thing here that might be of interest, you can look at this, after show, is this plays into what's going to be happening here in Jerusalem and the Temple Mount region once Israel agrees to have Solomon's temple rebuilt. If you go to, let's see, where show images here. Go to the show images page. A couple things here. The top picture is original Solomon's temple, and that's a Google Earth elevated shot, and it shows you where the Wailing Wall is, where the Dome of the Rock is, where Solomon's temple was and is buried, not too far down in the dirt, and it's not where everybody thought up on the Temple Mount. It's where they could rebuild it without interfering with the Dome of the Rock or Al-Aqsa Mosque or anything. And there's quite a bit of archaeological evidence to say that under that yellow arrow got pointing down right next to the end of the Temple Mount, that's where the original Temple of Solomon was built. It's just up the hill from the city of David, which, David's palace was a little bit lower, and the temple was up on that portion. And of course, the troop housing that the Romans built there for the troops, the 6,000 troops they had occupying Jerusalem, that's up in that whole area they call the Temple Mount. That's not where the temple was at all. So that's something to look at. And another, just an interesting thing, which you'll find in the second row, first picture of my show images page, is a picture of a green stone going over grooves in solid rock. In the Bible, it tells that Solomon had a secret stone called the Shamir stone, or sometimes called the worm, which he would point at rock, and cuts would appear in it, so that he could cut the rock for the Temple of Solomon, as God instructed, without using any metal instruments. So the stone of Shamir was used to point at the rock, and it would form a smooth surface and a clean cut, so the stones fit together snugly, as you see in this picture here. Okay, we're now approaching 30 seconds, I think, on the clock there, aren't we?
We are, Stan.
Okay. All right, well, I'll cut off there. The rest of it's self-explanatory.
Very interesting. That Solomon's temple, city of David, very interesting as well. Or very interesting, I must say.
Having you on the show, Stan, as we do every week. Our listeners love having you on the show.
Right.
Saw a surge of YouTube watchers come in right after you came on, so definitely still in high demand.
Always in
even
high
though
demand.
my dad's kept catching up to your age. No,
which
I'm
is
just
still
kidding.
young. And
Thanks.
The older we get, the closer we get, hey?
That's right.
We can't thank you and Holly enough for all you do for the community and the Christians and for the time you spend on our show. God bless you both, and you guys stay safe, and we'll see you next week, God willing.
You bet. God bless you guys. Good night.
Our best to you folks. All right.
Tomorrow night, it will just be my father and I.
And just
No guests.
That's right.
Just news.
Just us.
Your calls, and more. Thanks for listening on Global Star Radio Network to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. God bless you.
Out of here. Thank you, Global Star. Thank you, YouTube. God bless every one of you.
All right, good show, guys.
Hey, thank you, sir.
Yep. Okay, well, then we'll have the phone lines open.
Yeah, I'm sure we will, probably at least in the third hour. At the least.
Why don't we limit it to, if we can, why don't we limit it to like the third hour?